I woke to sterile white walls and the sharp smell of antiseptic burning my nostrils. My throat felt like sandpaper, and when I tried to speak, only a rasp emerged. Dad sat beside my hospital bed, his face swollen with tears. Pam, honey, you're awake, he sobbed, gripping my bandaged hand. There was a fire. Our house. Your mother didn't make it. You're the only one who survived. The world tilted sideways as his words crashed into me like physical blows. The weight of his words pressed down on my chest until I couldn't breathe. Mom was gone. The thought seemed impossible, like trying to imagine the world without sunlight. My father's face crumpled as he watched me process the devastating news, and fresh tears streamed down his cheeks. I tried, sweetheart. God knows I tried to get to her. He choked out, his voice breaking on every word. His hands trembled as he reached for the water pitcher, nearly knocking it over in his distress. The smoke was so thick and the flames, they moved so fast. By the time I realized what was happening, the whole second floor was engulfed. A nurse appeared in the doorway, her expression soft with sympathy. She moved quietly to check my IV, her presence, somehow both comforting and intrusive. Mr. Garrett, perhaps you should let Pam rest, she suggested gently. This is overwhelming for both of you. But Dad shook his head violently, clutching my hand tighter. No, I can't leave her. I already lost Sarah. I can't. His voice dissolved into sobs that shook his entire body. The nurse exchanged a meaningful look with someone in the hallway before patting Dad's shoulder. I'll give you a few more minutes, but she needs rest to heal. The doctor will want to examine her soon. As she left, Dad composed himself with visible effort. He pulled a crumpled tissue from his pocket and wiped his face, though fresh tears immediately replaced the old ones. You were on the lawn when I found you, he continued, his words coming in rushes between hitched breaths. I don't know how you got there. Maybe you jumped from your window, or maybe your mother managed to get you out before. He couldn't finish the sentence. The image it conjured was too horrible. My mind felt foggy, like trying to think through cotton. I remembered going to bed, remembered saying goodnight to Mom as she passed my door, but everything after that was blank, a terrifying void where memories should have been. The doctors said you inhaled a lot of smoke, Dad explained, seeming to need to fill the silence. You've been unconscious for 2 days. I haven't left this room except to identify. Again, he couldn't complete the thought. 2 days. 2 days of nothingness while my world burned down. I tried to speak, managing only a weak croak. Dad immediately held a straw to my lips, and the cool water felt like heaven against my raw throat. Don't try to talk yet, he urged. The doctors said it might take time for your voice to come back. The important thing is you're alive. You're here. But Mom wasn't. The reality of it hit me again, a fresh wave of grief that made my chest ache. How could she be gone? Just 2 nights ago, she'd been planning our weekend trip to the farmer's market. She'd been excited about the heirloom tomatoes coming into season. Such a mundane detail to remember now, when I'd never taste her homemade sauce again. Dad stood abruptly, swaying slightly on his feet. There are arrangements to make. People to call. Your Aunt Grace doesn't even know yet. I couldn't make those calls until I knew you were going to be okay. He leaned down to kiss my forehead, his lips cold against my skin. I'll be back in a few hours. Rest now, sweetheart. We'll get through this together. We have to. I watched him shuffle toward the door, noticing for the first time how his usually pressed shirt hung wrinkled and untucked. He paused at the threshold, turning back with an expression I couldn't quite read. I love you, Pam. Remember that. No matter what happens, I love you. The door clicked shut behind him, and I was alone with the steady beep of monitors and the antiseptic smell that couldn't quite mask something else underneath. Grief crashed over me in waves, each one threatening to pull me under. Mom was gone. The woman who taught me to braid my hair, who stayed up all night when I had the flu, who still called me her baby, even though I was 26 years old. Gone. I closed my eyes, willing myself to remember anything from that night, but there was only darkness and the phantom smell of smoke that might have been real or imagined. The harder I tried to grasp the memories, the further they seemed to slip away. A soft knock interrupted my spiral into despair. The door opened just wide enough for someone to peek through. "Ms. Garrett, Ms. Pam Garrett." I opened my eyes to see a young police officer standing uncertainly in the doorway. She was perhaps 30, with sharp brown eyes that seemed to take in every detail of the room in a single sweep. Her uniform was crisp, professional, but there was something in her expression that made my pulse quicken. "I'm Detective Sarah Chen," she said quietly, stepping inside and closing the door with deliberate care. She glanced toward the hallway, then moved closer to my bed. "I need to speak with you, but first I need to make sure we're alone. Is your father coming back soon?" I shook my head, confused by her cautious behavior. She nodded, seeming to come to a decision. Her next words changed everything. "Ms. Garrett, I've been investigating a pattern of suspicious fires in the county. I know this is difficult timing, but I need to ask you something important." She paused, studying my face with those penetrating eyes. "Are you ready to hear the truth about what really happened that night, about your father?" My heart stuttered in my chest as Detective Chen's words hung in the air between us. The truth about my father. What could she possibly mean? I tried to speak, but only managed a painful whisper. "What?" She pulled a chair close to my bed, her movements efficient but careful, as if she were approaching a spooked animal. From her jacket pocket, she withdrew a small notepad and a digital recorder. "May I record this conversation? It's for your protection as much as mine." I nodded mutely, my mind spinning. Protection from what? "Ms. Garrett, I'm part of a task force investigating a series of house fires that have occurred over the past 5 years. She began, her voice low but clear. 3 women have died in these fires. All of them were married. All of their husbands were conveniently absent when the fires started, and all of them had recently purchased or increased their life insurance policies." The words seemed to float in the air, refusing to arrange themselves into any pattern that made sense. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline to this terrible joke, but her expression remained deadly serious. "Your mother's case fits the pattern," she continued. 2 months ago, your father increased your mother's life insurance policy from $200,000 to $1.5 million. Did you know about this? I shook my head slowly. Insurance mom handled most of the household finances, but surely she would have mentioned something that significant. Unless she didn't know. Detective Chen flipped through her notepad. "The policy change was made without your mother's signature. Your father forged it. We have handwriting experts who've confirmed this." She looked up at me, gauging my reaction. "There's more, Ms. Garrett. This isn't the first time your father has been connected to a fatal fire." The room seemed to tilt again, but this time it wasn't from grief. It was from the slow, creeping realization that everything I thought I knew might be a lie. "What do you mean?" I managed to rasp. 15 years ago, your father was married to a woman named Linda Morrison. They lived in Springfield, about 60 miles from here. Linda died in a house fire while your father was allegedly at a business conference in Chicago. He collected $800,000 in life insurance. 15 years ago. I would have been 11, living with Mom in our old apartment on Maple Street. Dad hadn't come into our lives until I was 12. He'd told us he was a widower, that his wife had died in a car accident. Mom had been so sympathetic, bonding with him over their shared loss. My biological father had left when I was a baby. "He told us she died in a car accident," I whispered. Detective Chen's expression softened slightly. "I'm sorry. I know this is a lot to process, but there's a pattern here that we can't ignore. Would you like me to continue, or do you need a break?" I shook my head. I needed to hear it all, needed to understand what she was suggesting. "Please, tell me everything." She reached into a folder I hadn't noticed her carrying and pulled out a photograph. It showed a woman with dark hair and kind eyes smiling at the camera. This is Linda Morrison. She was 32 when she died. The fire was ruled accidental at the time, caused by faulty wiring. But when we started seeing similar patterns in other cases, we went back and reviewed old files. The woman in the photo looked nothing like Mom, but there was something in her smile that seemed familiar. The way she tilted her head, perhaps, or the warmth in her expression. She looked like someone who would have been a good mother. The accelerant patterns were subtle, but they're there, Chen continued. Someone used a combination of gasoline and lighter fluid applied in a way that would burn hot enough to destroy evidence, but look natural to investigators who weren't specifically searching for arson. My mind reeled. Dad, setting fires. Dad who grilled burgers for the neighborhood cookout every 4th of July, who taught me to ride a bike and walked me down the aisle at my high school graduation when Mom was stuck in traffic. It seemed impossible. But that's not all, Chen said, her voice gentle but relentless. We've been monitoring your father's activities for the past 3 months, ever since the insurance policy change raised red flags. He's in serious financial trouble, Ms. Garrett. He owes nearly $300,000 to some very dangerous people. Gambling. The word came out as barely a breath. Pieces of a puzzle I didn't know existed suddenly started clicking into place. Late nights at the office that stretched later and later. Business trips that seemed to produce no new contracts. Mom's increasingly worried expression when she thought I wasn't looking. Sports betting primarily. He's been using an underground bookmaker connected to organized crime. They've been pressuring him for payment. We have recordings of threatening phone calls. She produced another document from her folder, this one covered in Mom's familiar handwriting. My heart clenched at the sight of her neat script, each letter formed with the same care she brought to everything in life. We found this in your mother's car, Chen explained. It was parked at her sister Grace's house. This is the final entry dated the night of the fire. I forced my eyes to focus on the words, though they blurred through sudden tears. I'm leaving Harold tonight. I can't pretend anymore. I've discovered everything. The debts, the gambling, the lies about Linda. And there's another woman, Diane from his office. I've seen the texts, the credit card charges for hotels. I haven't told Pam yet. She loves him like a father, and I wanted to be sure before I destroyed that relationship. But I have proof now. Tonight, after he leaves for his trip, Pam and I are going to Grace's. I'll tell her everything once we're safe. I pray she'll understand why I waited so long. I just wanted to protect her. I've always just wanted to protect her. The journal entry ended there. No more words from Mom. No more chances to protect anyone. Your mother was planning to leave, Chen said unnecessarily. The words were clear enough. She'd been planning it for weeks. She'd already rented an apartment across town under her maiden name, moved some belongings into a storage unit, consulted with a divorce attorney. But the fire... I started, then stopped. The implication was clear. The fire had started the same night Mom planned to leave. The night Dad was supposed to be on a business trip. Your father's alibi is that he was driving to a client meeting in Columbus, Chen continued. But we've checked. There was no meeting. The client he claimed to be visiting was on vacation in Florida. Your father's car was photographed by a traffic camera 2 miles from your house at 11:45 p.m. The fire started at approximately 2 a.m. 2 hours. 2 hours unaccounted for. 2 hours that might have cost Mom her life. There's something else, Chen said, pulling out a tablet and swiping to a video file. This is security footage from your neighbor's house. They have a camera that partially covers your driveway. The black and white footage was grainy but clear enough. I watched Dad's BMW pull out of our driveway just as he'd said. The timestamp read 12:03 a.m., but then Chen fast-forwarded the video. At 1:37 a.m., another figure appeared walking up our driveway with purposeful strides. The person was smaller than Dad, wearing dark clothing and a baseball cap. Do you recognize this person? Chen asked. I studied the figures, something familiar about the walk, the way they held their shoulders. Then they passed under the streetlight, and for just a moment their face was visible. "Oh, Diane," I breathed. Dad's secretary, the woman who'd worked for him for 4 years, who always remembered my birthday and asked about my job at the marketing firm. The woman Mom had mentioned in her journal. The other woman. "Diane Hutchinson," Chen confirmed. "She entered your house at 1:37 a.m. The fire started approximately 23 minutes later. She's the last person seen entering before the flames began." My world, already shattered by Mom's death, crumbled further. Dad and Diane, working together, planning together, the word formed in my mind before I could stop it: murder. "We need your help, Ms. Garrett," Chen said urgently. "Your father needs to believe you don't remember anything from that night. Can you do that? Can you pretend just until we gather enough evidence for an arrest?" I thought of Mom's journal, her careful plans to protect me even as she prepared to leave the man she no longer trusted. She died trying to keep me safe. The least I could do was help catch her killers. "Yes," I whispered, my voice stronger than it had been since waking. "I can do that." Detective Chen returned the next morning, this time accompanied by a forensic accountant named Marcus Webb. They spread documents across my hospital tray table like evidence of a life I'd never known existed. Bank statements, credit reports, loan documents, all painting a picture of a man drowning in debt while maintaining a facade of success. "Your father's construction business has been struggling for 3 years. Webb explained, his finger tracing columns of red numbers. "He's been taking out loans to cover loans, maxing out credit cards, liquidating retirement accounts. But the legitimate debts are nothing compared to what he owes to Vincent Torino." The name sent a chill through me. Everyone in Ohio knew about the Torino family, though most pretended they didn't. They operated behind legitimate businesses, their influence spreading through the state like poison through veins. $347,000, Webb continued. "That's what your father owes as of last week. The interest compounds daily. Torino's enforcement division has been applying pressure." Chen pulled out another set of photos. These showed Dad at various locations around the city, always with the same 2 men nearby. Large men with dead eyes and expensive suits. "These are Torino's collectors. They've been following your father for weeks. We intercepted some of their communications. They were growing impatient." I studied the photos, trying to reconcile the haunted-looking man in them with the father who'd raised me. He looked smaller, somehow diminished by fear. In one image taken outside a restaurant, his hand was visibly shaking as he reached for his car door. "Your mother knew," Chen said softly. "She'd been documenting everything for months. We found these in the storage unit she'd rented." She handed me a file thick with papers. Mom's handwriting covered every page, detailed notes about Dad's behavior, his absences, the calls that made him go pale. She'd hired a private investigator, paid for it from her inheritance from Grandma that she'd kept in a separate account. The investigator's reports were thorough and damning. "Oh, Harold Garrett has been living a double life for approximately 4 years. I read aloud, my voice still hoarse. "By day, he maintains the image of a successful contractor and family man. By night, he frequents underground gambling establishments, particularly the Ace High Club on the east side. Surveillance confirms he has lost substantial sums, often staying until dawn." There were photographs, too. Dad entering unmarked buildings, Dad slumped over a poker table, Dad arguing with men who looked like they broke bones for a living. In every image, he looked like a stranger wearing my father's face. "This one was taken 2 weeks before the fire." Chen pointed to a particularly disturbing photo. Dad was backed against a wall in an alley, one of Torino's men holding him by the throat. The terror on his face was visceral, primal. After this encounter, he became desperate. That's when he started researching house fires. Webb pulled up data on a laptop. We got a warrant for his search history. In the 2 weeks before the fire, he visited dozens of websites about accidental fires insurance investigations, accelerants that leave minimal trace. He was particularly interested in electrical fires. My stomach turned. While Mom was planning our escape, Dad was planning her murder. The parallel horror of it was almost too much to comprehend. They'd shared a bed, shared meals, shared what I thought was a life, all while plotting against each other in the dark. "There's something else you need to know," Chen said carefully, "about Linda Morrison, his first wife." She produced another file, this one older, the papers slightly yellowed. "We've been in contact with Linda's sister Margaret. She lives in California now, but she's never stopped questioning her sister's death. She provided us with letters Linda had written in the months before she died." I took the letters with trembling hands. Linda's handwriting was different from Mom's, more flowery, but the content was horrifyingly familiar. "Harold's changed Maggie. He's secretive, angry. I found betting slips in his jacket, thousands of dollars. When I confronted him, he grabbed my wrist so hard he left bruises. I'm scared, but I don't know what to do. He's all I have here." Another letter dated just a month before her death. "I'm going to leave him. I've been saving money a little at a time. He doesn't know. I'll come to you in California. I just need a few more weeks to get everything arranged. Please don't call the house. He's been listening to my calls." The final letter was the shortest. "If something happens to me, it wasn't an accident. Harold has been asking strange questions about the house insurance. He fixes things for a living, Maggie. Why is he suddenly concerned about electrical problems I'm leaving tomorrow? I'll call you from the road." She never made that call. "The fire that killed Linda started in the basement electrical panel," Chen explained. "It was ruled accidental because your father had reported problems with the wiring to several friends, establishing a pattern of concern. But looking back, it seems more like establishing an alibi." 15 years. He'd been planning and executing murder for 15 years. How many close calls had there been? How many other women had almost become victims? I thought of all the times Mom had mentioned feeling lucky to have found such a devoted partner after my biological father left. The cruel irony made me want to scream. "We think Diane Hutchinson might be the key to everything," Webb interjected. "She's been having an affair with your father for 3 years, but there's more to their relationship than romance." He showed me financial records linking Diane to several suspicious transactions. She's been helping him hide assets, creating false invoices through the company to generate cash. Some of that money went to gambling debts, but not all of it. "We think they were planning a future together." "With Mom's insurance money," I said flatly, "it wasn't a question." $2 million between the life insurance and your mother's family trust, Chen confirmed. "Enough to pay off Torino, start fresh somewhere else, and live comfortably. But there was one problem with their plan." She pointed to a legal document I didn't recognize. "Your mother changed her will a week before she died. She left everything to you with specific language excluding your father from any inheritance. She also added a clause stating that if her death was ruled suspicious in any way, a full investigation should be launched before any assets were distributed." Mom had known. Maybe not the specific plan, but she'd known enough to protect what she could. Even facing death, she'd been thinking of me. "The storage unit had more than just documents," Chen continued. "Your mother had been building a complete case. Financial records, photographs, recordings. She had a meeting scheduled with both a divorce attorney and the FBI's Financial Crimes Division for the Monday after the fire. She was going to expose everything." "The FBI," I croaked. "Some of your father's construction contracts were government funded. If he was using that business to launder gambling money or defraud clients, it becomes a federal matter. Your mother was very thorough." Thorough enough to get herself killed. The thought hit me like a physical blow. If she'd just left without building a case, if she'd just taken me and run, would she still be alive? But that wasn't who Mom was. She believed in justice, in doing things the right way. It had cost her everything. "What about that night?" I asked. Do we know what actually happened? Chen and Webb exchanged glances. We're piecing it together. Your mother had drugged your dinner with a mild sedative. We found residue in dishes recovered from the scene. We think she was planning to carry you to the car, without waking your father, drive to Grace's and figure out next steps from there. But Dad came home early, I said, remembering his supposed business trip. He never left town. He checked into a motel under a false name, established an alibi with the desk clerk, then doubled back. Diane met him there. They waited until they thought you'd both be deeply asleep. The clinical description of murder planning made my skin crawl. They'd synchronized their watches probably, checked their supplies, kissed for luck before heading out to kill the woman who trusted him. The security footage from the motel shows them leaving together at 1:15 a.m., Webb added. Your father dropped Diane off near your house, then drove to establish another alibi at an all-night diner. He made sure the waitress would remember him, complained about insomnia, left a large tip. While Mom was fighting for her life, Dad was calmly eating pie and creating witnesses. The calculation of it, the cold planning, revealed a stranger wearing the face of the man who'd taught me to drive. We need more evidence, Chen said. What we have is compelling but circumstantial. We need something concrete, something that ties them directly to the fire. That's where you come in, Ms. Garrett. Your father doesn't know how much you remember from that night. If he thinks his plan is working, he might make a mistake. I finished. My throat burned, whether from smoke damage or suppressed rage, I couldn't tell. What do you need me to do? Chen leaned forward, her expression intense. Can you be his grieving daughter? Can you let him comfort you, trust you, maybe even confess to you? I know it's asking a lot, but you might be our only chance at justice for your mother and Linda Morrison. I thought of Mom's journal, her careful plans, her determination to protect me even as her world crumbled. I thought of Linda's letters to her sister, the fear bleeding through every word. 2 women who'd loved Harold Garrett and paid for it with their lives. How many more might there be if he wasn't stopped? Yes, I said, my voice stronger than it had been since waking. I can do that. For Mom, for Linda, for anyone else he might hurt. Chen squeezed my hand, the first human gesture she'd allowed herself. Your mother would be proud. We're going to get him, Ms. Garrett. Together, we're going to get them both. As they gathered their documents, to leave one last question burned in my mind. The fire investigator's initial report. Did it say anything about how I survived? Chen paused at the door. That's one of the mysteries we're trying to solve. You were found on the front lawn, but there's no clear explanation for how you got there. Your bedroom window was closed and locked from the inside. The front door was still deadbolted. It's like you just appeared outside. Someone saved me, I said slowly. Someone got me out. Yes, Chen agreed. The question is who, and why they didn't save your mother too. Diane Hutchinson arrived at my hospital room carrying a bouquet of white lilies and wearing a performance of grief that might have fooled someone who wasn't looking for the seams. Her makeup was perfectly applied, just smudged enough around the eyes to suggest tears, without actually ruining her mascara. She'd chosen a black dress that was somber enough for a condolence visit, but still flattering to her figure. Every detail had been considered crafted, rehearsed. Oh, Pam, she sighed, setting the flowers on my bedside table with practiced grace. I'm so desperately sorry about your mother. Sarah was such a wonderful woman. We're all just devastated at the office. I forced myself to remain still, to not react to hearing Mom's name in her mouth. The woman who'd helped murder her was standing 3 feet away, performing sympathy like an actress gunning for an Oscar. I kept my expression carefully blank, letting her interpret it as shock or medication fog. Thank you for coming. I managed my voice, still raspy enough to hide any emotion that might leak through. Detective Chen had coached me carefully. Let them talk. Let them fill the silence. Let them reveal themselves. Diane settled into the visitor's chair, crossing her legs and leaning forward with an expression of deep concern. Your father is just beside himself. I've never seen Harold so broken. He blames himself, you know. Keeps saying he should have been home, should have checked the smoke detectors more recently. The smoke detectors. Such a thoughtful touch, bringing up a detail that would reinforce their accident narrative. I wondered if they disabled them before setting the fire or if that was just another layer of the cover story. He said you don't remember much from that night. She continued, watching my face carefully. That's probably a blessing, honestly. Some things are better left forgotten. There it was, the fishing expedition disguised as comfort. I let my eyes drift away from her face as if struggling with fragmented memories. Everything's fuzzy. I remember going to bed and then waking up here. Of course, Diane said quickly, too quickly. The doctors said smoke inhalation can affect memory. You just focus on healing. Let your father and I handle all the difficult arrangements. Your father and I. Such casual possession, as if she already owned him, as if Mom's body wasn't even cold yet. But then she'd been owning parts of him for 3 years, hadn't she? 3 years of hotel rooms and secret texts and planning the murder of the woman whose husband she was stealing. You've been helping Dad a lot, I observed, keeping my tone neutral. He mentioned you've been at the office handling things. A flash of something crossed her face. Pride, maybe, or satisfaction. Well, someone needs to keep the business running. Harold can't afford to lose contracts right now on top of everything else. I know what he needs. I'll bet you do, I thought. You know about the debts, the threats, the desperate need for money. You know because you helped create the solution. A solution that involved accelerants, an alibi, and my mother's death. Actually, Diane continued, reaching into her purse, I brought some papers that need your signature. Just routine things for the insurance claims. Your father gave me power of attorney to handle the preliminary paperwork, but some things require family signatures. She produced a slim folder and every instinct screamed at me not to touch it, but I reached out with a trembling hand, playing the part of the overwhelmed daughter, grateful for help with practical matters. Inside were insurance forms, beneficiary confirmations, documents that would start the process of turning Mom's death into money. I can walk you through them, Diane offered, scooting her chair closer. Her perfume was expensive, cloying, nothing like Mom's subtle lavender scent. This first one is just confirming your identity as secondary beneficiary. Standard procedure. Secondary beneficiary, because Dad was primary. $2 million worth of primary. I pretended to read through the form, but my eyes kept catching on Diane's hands. Her manicure was fresh, probably done yesterday. French tips with a subtle shine. How did someone get their nails done the day after committing murder? There was a detective here, I said, suddenly watching her reaction, asking questions about the fire. Diane's hand stilled for just a moment on the paper she was arranging. Oh, that's standard, I'm sure. They have to investigate any fatal fire. What did they ask about? Just routine things, where Dad was when I last saw Mom, that kind of thing. I paused, then added, they mentioned something about security cameras in the neighborhood. This time the reaction was more visible. Diane's shoulders tensed, and she took a breath that was slightly too deep. Security cameras, I didn't know your neighbors had those. The Thompsons, apparently. They installed them last month after those break-ins on Oak Street. I watched her process this information, could almost see her trying to remember if she'd been careful enough, if the baseball cap and dark clothes had been sufficient disguise. Well, I'm sure that will help them confirm it was an accident, she said, but her voice had tightened. Electrical fires are so tragic, but so common in older homes. Your parents really should have rewired years ago. Your parents. As if Dad wasn't the one who'd refused to spend money on the house while pouring thousands into poker games and sports bets. As if Mom hadn't begged him to fix the actually dangerous things while he insisted on cosmetic improvements that would impress his clients. Diane, I said, making my voice small and vulnerable, can I ask you something? She leaned in all false maternal concern. Of course, sweetie, anything. Were Mom and Dad happy? I mean, really happy? Sometimes I wondered. The question caught her off guard. For a moment, her mask slipped, and I saw something underneath that might have been genuine emotion. Guilt. Triumph. It was gone too quickly to identify. All marriages have their challenges, she said carefully, but your father loved your mother very much. I'm sure of that. Loved her so much he murdered her for money. Loved her so much he was sleeping with his secretary. Loved her so much he let her burn while he established an alibi over coffee and pie. But I just nodded, playing the naive daughter who wanted to believe in fairy tales. He's lucky to have you, I said and watched her preen, to help with everything I mean. The business would fall apart without you. I do my best, she replied, and there was real pride in her voice now. Harold and I have always worked well together. We understand each other. I wondered what that understanding entailed. Did they discuss murder over spreadsheets, plan alibis between client calls, or was it all unspoken a mutual recognition of darkness that drew them together like magnets? These last few months must have been stressful. I continued fishing carefully. Dad seemed so tense lately. Mom was worried about him. Diane's expression hardened slightly. Your mother didn't understand the pressure Harold was under. Running a business isn't easy. Sometimes sacrifices have to be made. Like sacrificing your wife for insurance money, but I kept my face neutral, nodding as if I understood. Mom could be naive about things. She always wanted to believe the best about people. Yes, Diane agreed, and there was something almost like contempt in her tone. She was very trusting. Too trusting to suspect that her husband's secretary was planning her death. Too trusting to run fast enough when she finally understood. I thought of Mom's journal, her careful documentation, and realized Diane was wrong. Mom hadn't been trusting at all by the end. She just hadn't been paranoid enough. I should let you rest, Diane said abruptly, gathering the signed papers. Your father will be by later. He's meeting with the funeral director this morning. Picking out a casket for the woman he murdered, choosing flowers for the grave he put her in, the obscenity of it made me want to vomit, but I just nodded weakly. Diane stood smoothing her dress. Then she paused, turning back with an expression that was harder to read. Pam, you know you can talk to me about anything, right? If you remember something from that night, something confusing or frightening, you can tell me. Sometimes trauma can create false memories. It's important to be careful about what you share with strangers. The threat was subtle but clear. Keep quiet or risk being labeled traumatized and unreliable. I wondered if this was planned or improvised, if she was following a script or acting on instinct. I understand, I said quietly. Thank you for looking out for me. She smiled, then the predator satisfied that the prey understood its position. That's what family does. And that's what we are now, isn't it, family? The word tasted like ash. Family. The woman who murdered my mother wanted to play family with me, but I smiled back, weak and grateful, the perfect picture of a girl who needed guidance and protection. After she left, I counted to 100 before allowing myself to react. My hands shook as I reached for my phone, texting the number Chen had given me. She was here, threatening me about false memories, got her on recording. Because, of course, I'd recorded it. The app Chen had installed was voice-activated, capturing every word of Diane's performance. Evidence. Proof. Another brick in the wall they were building around my parents' killers. Chen's response came quickly. Good work. Stay strong. Justice is coming. I stared at the white lilies Diane had brought, their funeral perfume filling the room. Mom had preferred roses, vibrant red ones from her own garden. She'd never know another summer, never see those roses bloom again. But her daughter would see justice done. That much I could promise. The flowers would be dead within a week. But the recording, the evidence, the determination to make them pay, that would last forever. Or at least long enough to put 2 killers behind bars. The nurse came in to check my vitals, clucking sympathetically at the flowers. How thoughtful, she said. You have people who care about you. Yes. I agreed, thinking of Detective Chen of Mom's sister, flying in from Seattle of the growing case file that would soon explode my father's carefully crafted world. I do. Detective Chen arrived at dawn the next day, her face grim with new revelations. She carried a box of evidence bags, each one containing a piece of the puzzle that was my mother's final night. As she laid them out on my hospital bed, the story they told made my blood run cold. We've reconstructed the timeline. She began pulling out a clear bag containing a prescription bottle. This is the sleeping medication your mother used. She crushed 10 milligrams into your dinner, enough to make you deeply drowsy, but not dangerous. The residue was found on a plate in the dishwasher. I stared at the bottle, recognizing Mom's handwriting on the pharmacy label. She'd been prescribed the medication for insomnia months ago, but rarely took it. Now I understood why she'd kept it. Your mother had everything planned perfectly, Chen continued. Grace confirms that Sarah called her at 6 p.m. that night, confirming she'd be there by midnight with you. Your mother had already loaded her car with essential items. Another evidence bag contained a key ring I didn't recognize. These are for the apartment she rented downtown. She'd already moved some of your belongings there, things she thought you'd want. Photo albums, your grandmother's jewelry, important documents. My throat tightened. While I'd been obliviously eating dinner, Mom had been orchestrating our escape with military precision. She'd thought of everything except for the possibility that Dad might figure it out. The sedative should have taken effect by 8 p.m., Chen explained. Your mother planned to carry you to the car around 11, after your father's supposed departure for Columbus. But Harold came home at 9:30. He wasn't supposed to be there, I whispered. No, we have a recording from a neighbor's doorbell camera. Your father's car pulled into the garage at 9:27. He entered through the kitchen where your mother was packing the last items. Chen produced a tablet, swiping to a series of crime scene photos. I steeled myself before looking, but they showed only the kitchen, not anything more horrific. Still, the evidence of violence was clear. Broken dishes scattered across the floor, a knife block tipped over, scratches on the linoleum that looked like drag marks. There was a struggle, Chen said quietly. Your mother fought hard. We found Harold's skin cells under her fingernails. She managed to scratch him deeply enough to draw blood. I thought of Dad's long-sleeved shirts in the hospital, even in the warm room, hiding scratches, hiding evidence of Mom's desperate fight for our lives. Where was Diane during this? I asked. Waiting in the car initially. We think Harold called her once he'd subdued your mother. The timeline suggests she entered the house around 10:15. Chen pulled out another photo. This is from the Thompsons' camera. You can see her approaching the back door. The image was clearer than the earlier one, probably because she wasn't expecting cameras at the rear of the property. Diane's face was visible, set in lines of determination. She carried something in her hands, a bag of some kind. Accelerants, Chen confirmed. She brought the gasoline and lighter fluid mixture. They'd practiced this, we believe. The distribution pattern was too precise for amateurs working in the dark. But I was unconscious from the sleeping pills, I said. How did I end up on the lawn? Chen's expression grew troubled. That's where things get complicated. Your bedroom door was locked from the inside. Your window was closed and latched. There's no logical explanation for how you got out. She showed me more photos. My bedroom smoke-damaged but structurally intact. The door showed signs of intense heat from the hallway side, but my room itself was less damaged than others. We think someone carried you out before the fire reached your room, Chen said. But here's the strange part. Both Harold and Diane have alibi witnesses placing them elsewhere when you were found on the lawn. Then who? I asked. Mr. Thompson, your neighbor. He saw the flames around 2:10 a.m. and called 911. He told the operator he was going to try to help. We think he's the one who found you, though he was confused and disoriented when firefighters arrived. Smoke inhalation affected his memory of exactly what happened. I vaguely remembered Mr. Thompson, a widower in his 70s who Mom used to bake cookies for during the holidays. The idea that he'd risked his life to save mine while my own father was establishing an alibi made my chest tight with emotion. Your mother was found in the master bedroom, Chen continued gently. The door had been barricaded from the outside. She tried to break the window, but the old painted frames wouldn't budge. The fire started right outside her door and in your room, simultaneously cutting off both exit routes. The cruelty of it stole my breath. They trapped her like an animal, ensuring she had no escape while flames consumed everything around her. I could picture her desperately fighting with the window, probably screaming my name, believing I was dying in the next room. The accelerant pattern tells us something else, Chen added. There was a third point of origin in the garage, but that one failed to ignite properly. We found evidence of gasoline poured around your mother's car. They wanted to destroy evidence of her escape attempt, I realized. Exactly. Her car was loaded with suitcases, boxes of documents, evidence she'd gathered about Harold's debts and affairs. If that had burned, it would have eliminated proof of her plans to leave. But it didn't burn. No, we think they used too much gasoline there and it actually smothered the initial flame. Amateur mistake. The car and all its contents survived intact. Another evidence bag contained a phone, the screen cracked, but still functional. Your mother's cell phone was in the car. She'd been recording conversations with Harold for weeks. We have him threatening her, demanding she sign papers talking about solving their problems permanently. Chen played one of the recordings. Dad's voice filled the room, but it was nothing like the warm tone I'd grown up with. This was a stranger's voice, cold and menacing. You think you can just leave, take everything I've worked for, I'll see you dead first, Sarah. You and your precious daughter, don't test me. You have no idea what I'm capable of. Mom's response was steady, despite the threat. I'm recording this, Harold. Every word. If anything happens to me or Pam, the police will know exactly who's responsible. You think your little recordings matter, Dad sneered. Accidents happen all the time. House fires are so tragic, so hard to investigate. No one would suspect a grieving widower and father. The recording ended there. Mom's prescience was chilling. She'd known exactly what he was planning, had even recorded him essentially confessing to it. But she'd underestimated his timeline. She'd thought she had days or weeks. She'd had hours. "Os, there's more," Chen said. "Your Aunt Grace received a package from your mother 2 days before the fire. Sarah mailed her copies of everything along with a letter to be opened in case of emergency." She handed me a photocopy of the letter. Mom's handwriting blurred through my tears as I read. "My dearest Grace, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. Harold has become dangerous. I've discovered he killed his first wife, Linda, and I believe he's planning the same for me. Everything you need to prove this is in the enclosed documents. Please protect Pam. She doesn't know what her father is capable of. I've tried to shield her, but if I'm gone, she needs to know the truth. Take care of my baby. All my love, Sarah." "She knew," I whispered. "She knew exactly what was going to happen." "She was a very brave woman," Chen said softly. "She gathered enough evidence to convict her own killer before he even acted. But she stayed to protect you, to try to get you both out safely. And it killed her." "No," Chen said firmly. "Harold killed her. Diane killed her. Your mother died trying to save you, and she succeeded. You're alive because of her planning her medication that kept you unconscious and in your room instead of trying to help when the fire started. If you'd been awake, you might have run into the hall straight into the flames." The thought horrified me. Mom had drugged me to save me, knowing it would prevent me from trying to save her in return. Another layer of her sacrifice, another depth to her love. "What about Dad's original plan?" I asked. "Before Mom tried to escape." Chen's face darkened. "We found searches on his computer about insulin overdoses, making murder look like accidents, untraceable poisons. We think he was planning something slower, more subtle. Your mother's escape attempt forced him to accelerate and improvise." "Which made him sloppy," I said. "Exactly. His desperation led to mistakes. The failed ignition in the garage, Diane being caught on camera, the accelerant patterns that scream arson to trained investigators. If they'd stuck to Harold's original plan, we might never have known. Mom saved me even in death, I realized. By forcing their hand, she made them reveal themselves. Chen nodded. Your mother was remarkable. Every move she made, even the ones that seemed dangerous, were calculated to protect you and ensure justice. She turned their own violence into evidence against them. I looked at all the evidence bags spread across my bed. Each one represented a moment from that terrible night, a piece of the story that ended with Mom's death and my unlikely survival. But they also represented hope, justice, the possibility that her killers would pay for their crimes. What happens now? I asked. Now we build on what your mother started, Chen said. We take all this evidence, combine it with what you're gathering by staying close to Harold, and we make sure he never hurts anyone again. Your mother lit the fuse on their destruction. We're just going to make sure it burns all the way to the end. I thought of Mom in her final moments, trapped in that room, knowing I was safe, even as flames approached. She'd won in a way. She'd saved her daughter and guaranteed her killers would be caught. It was a bitter victory, but it was still victory. When do I have to see him again? I asked, meaning Dad, but unable to call him that anymore. He's coming this afternoon. Remember, you know nothing. You're grateful for his survival story, confused about that night, trusting in his version of events. Can you do that? I fingered Mom's letter, her final words of love and warning. Yes, I said firmly. I can do anything if it means justice for her. Harold arrived at 3 p.m. sharp, carrying a coffee for himself and flowers that looked hastily purchased from the hospital gift shop. His performance of the grieving widower had evolved over the days, becoming more refined, more believable. The red-rimmed eyes seemed genuine now, though I suspected it was exhaustion from maintaining his lies rather than actual grief causing them. "How's my girl?" he asked, settling into the visitor's chair with a heavy sigh. His shirt was wrinkled, his usually clean-shaven face showing stubble. All calculated, I realized, to project the image of a man too devastated to care about appearances. Better, I managed, keeping my voice weak. The doctors say I can go home soon. Something flickered in his eyes at the word home. Fear. Calculation. It was gone too quickly to identify. About that, he said, leaning forward, our house is... Well, it's not livable. I've rented a place temporarily just until the insurance comes through and we can rebuild. Rebuild on the ashes of my mother's murder. I swallowed the rage that threatened to surface. Where? A condo downtown, 2 bedrooms. It's nothing fancy, but it'll do for now. He paused, studying my face. Unless you'd prefer to stay with your Aunt Grace, she's offered. The thought of living under the same roof as Mom's killer made my skin crawl, but Chen had been clear. Stay close. Keep him talking. Make him comfortable enough to make mistakes. I want to stay with you, I said, injecting a note of little girl vulnerability into my voice. I don't want to be alone. His relief was palpable. Of course, sweetheart. We'll get through this together. He reached over to squeeze my hand, and it took everything I had not to recoil from his touch, the same hands that had subdued Mom while Diane prepared the accelerants. But Dad, I said hesitantly, I've been having dreams. Fragments from that night. He went very still. Oh, what kind of dreams? Confusing ones. I thought I heard voices. Mom calling for me. Someone else too. A woman, I think. I watched his face, carefully saw the micro-expressions Chen had taught me to recognize. A tightening around the eyes. A slight flare of the nostrils. Trauma can create false memories, he said carefully. The doctors warned me about this. Your mind trying to fill in the blanks with things that didn't happen. The same line Diane had used. They'd coordinated their stories, prepared for this possibility, but knowing their script gave me power. You're probably right, I agreed. It's just... The woman's voice sounded familiar, like someone I knew. Harold's hand tightened on his coffee cup. The smoke, The fear it can distort things. I'm sure it was just your imagination mixing with memories. Maybe a neighbor calling out people were gathering on the street by the time I arrived. The lie slipped out so smoothly. He'd already forgotten he'd told police he was in Columbus, that he'd arrived after I was already safe. These little inconsistencies were piling up, and Chen was documenting everyone. Tell me about Mom, I said suddenly. How did you meet? I realized I never asked for the whole story. The topic change caught him off guard, but he recovered quickly. We met at a hardware store, actually. She was trying to fix a leaky faucet herself, had all the wrong parts. I offered to help. This much was true. I'd heard the story before, but I wanted to see how he'd tell it now if guilt would color the memory. She was so independent, he continued, and something that might have been genuine emotion crossed his face. Refused my help at first. Said she could figure it out herself. It took 3 trips to the store before she finally let me show her what she needed. She was stubborn, I agreed, and had to blink back real tears. The most stubborn woman I ever met, Harold said, and for just a moment I saw a flash of the man I'd thought he was. Then it was gone, replaced by calculation. That's what makes this so tragic. If she'd just woken me when she smelled smoke instead of trying to handle it herself. The narrative was evolving. Now Mom's independence was being weaponized against her, turned into the reason for her death. I wanted to scream that she'd died trying to escape him, but I bit my tongue until I tasted blood. She always tried to protect everyone else first, I said instead. Yes, Harold agreed eagerly. That's probably why she sent you out your window before trying to escape herself, always putting others first. Another evolution. Now he was creating a heroic narrative for Mom that also explained my presence on the lawn. The story would keep shifting, I realized, adapting to whatever evidence emerged. He was building a legend in real time. Diane stopped by yesterday, I mentioned casually. She brought some papers to sign. Harold nodded. She's been invaluable. I don't know how I'd keep the business running without her. She understands what we're going through. She seems very devoted to you, I said, watching him process the words. To the company, I mean. Diane's been with me for 4 years, he said carefully. She knows how things work. It's good to have someone reliable during times like this. Mom liked her. I lied, testing boundaries. Said she was glad you had someone so competent at the office. Something shifted in his expression. Your mother was very trusting, he said, unconsciously echoing Diane's words. She always saw the best in people. Is that bad? I asked innocently. Sometimes trust can be dangerous, he said, then caught himself. I mean, she trusted that old wiring too much. I told her we needed to update the electrical system, but she thought it was fine. Another lie. I remembered clearly Mom begging him to hire an electrician while he insisted on spending money on cosmetic upgrades for his business image. The gaslighting was so smooth, so practiced. How many times had he revised history even while Mom was alive? The detective came by again. I said, shifting tactics. Detective Chen, she had questions about the insurance. Harold's coffee sloshed slightly as his hand jerked. Insurance. That's routine. They always investigate when there's a claim this size. $2 million is a lot, I said, watching him carefully. I didn't even want that much coverage, he said quickly. Your mother insisted. She worried about you, wanted to make sure you'd be taken care of if anything happened to us. The lie was so bold, so complete that I almost admired it. He'd turned his forgery into Mom's idea, made her complicit in her own murder value. But I just nodded, playing the naive daughter. She was always thinking ahead, I agreed. Did you know she'd changed her will? This time, the coffee cup slipped brown liquid splashing onto his pants. He cursed, grabbing napkins to dab at the stain. What, when? The lawyer called, I said, keeping my voice casual. She updated it last week, left everything directly to me. I watched him process this, could see the calculations running behind his eyes. The will change threatened everything. Without access to Mom's trust fund, even the insurance money might not be enough to cover his debts. That makes sense, he said finally. She wanted to make sure you were protected, though I'm sure it was just a formality. She never expected. No, I agreed. She never expected to die at 48. The number hung between us. Mom's age, her unfinished life, all the years stolen by the man sitting beside me pretending to grieve. The lawyer wants to meet with us, I continued. Something about the estate and the investigation. He says nothing can be distributed until the fire marshal completes their report. Investigation, Harold repeated. They're calling it an investigation? Standard procedure for any fatal fire, apparently. He said it could take weeks. I watched him absorb this timeline. Weeks without money while Torino's interest compounded daily. Weeks of maintaining his grieving widower act. Weeks for investigators to uncover evidence they'd left behind. We'll get through it, he said finally, but his voice had lost some of its false warmth. Together. A knock interrupted whatever response I might have made. A nurse entered, but not one I recognized. She was older with sharp eyes and efficient movements. Way time for medication, she announced, though I wasn't due for anything for another 2 hours. Harold stood quickly, eager to escape. I should go. Let you rest. I'll be back tomorrow to take you to the rental. Dad, I called as he reached the door. He turned and I forced myself to smile. I love you. We're going to be okay, right? The words were acid on my tongue, but they had the desired effect. He relaxed, visibly his performance face sliding back into place. Of course we are, sweetheart. I love you too. After he left, the nurse approached my bed. As she leaned in to check my IV, she whispered, Good job. Chen's team got every word. She left as quickly as she'd come, leaving me alone with the knowledge that I'd just spent an hour with my mother's killer pretending to love him. The coffee stain on his pants looked like blood in the afternoon light. Dr. Patricia Lawson didn't look like a trauma specialist. With her silver hair pulled back in a loose bun and her preference for colorful scarves over white coats, she seemed more like a favorite aunt than someone trained to excavate buried memories. But Chen had assured me she was the best, specifically trained in recovering memories affected by smoke inhalation and trauma. Memory is a tricky thing, Dr. Lawson explained during our first session in the hospital's quiet room, especially when trauma and physical factors like smoke inhalation are involved. The mind protects itself sometimes by hiding things that are too painful or dangerous to remember. But the memories are still there, I asked. Often, yes. Think of it like a jigsaw puzzle scattered in a dark room. The pieces exist, but we need to carefully bring light to find them and see how they fit together. Over the next 2 days, we worked through various techniques. Guided meditation, association exercises, careful questioning designed to trigger recall without creating false memories. At first, all I could summon were sensations, the acrid smell of smoke, the feeling of being lifted, a woman's voice sharp with urgency. Then during our third session, something clicked. I want you to focus on the feeling of being carried, Dr. Lawson suggested. Don't try to see who's carrying you, just focus on the physical sensation. I closed my eyes, letting myself drift back. The memory came in fragments at first. Hands under my arms, smaller than Dad's, the scent of perfume mixing with smoke. Expensive perfume, the kind that... What, Diane? I gasped, my eyes flying open. It was Diane who carried me. Dr. Lawson made a note but kept her voice calm. Tell me what you remember. The memory sharpened, like adjusting the focus on a camera. I was so groggy from the sleeping pills, but I remember her face above me, illuminated by flames from the hallway. She was carrying me, but not toward my window or the front door. She was heading toward the back of the house. The garage, Dr. Lawson prompted gently. Yes. She was taking me to the garage. I remember thinking how strange it was, even through the medication fog. Why the garage when the front door was closer? More pieces clicked into place. She was saying something, talking to herself or maybe to someone on the phone. Something about both packages and clean scene. My blood chilled as I understood. She was going to put me in the car with Mom's escape supplies, make it look like we both died trying to leave. What happened next? Dr. Lawson asked. I closed my eyes again, pushing through the haze. Lights, sudden bright lights through the smoke, headlights. Someone had pulled into our driveway. The memory crystallized with startling clarity. Diane cursed. She stopped moving, stood frozen for a moment. Then she heard something, a car door maybe, and she dropped me, just let me fall onto the kitchen floor and ran. Do you remember anything after that? This part was hazier, but fragments emerged. Different hands, bigger, older, someone grunting with effort, the feeling of being dragged, then lifted, cold air hitting my face, grass under my back. Mr. Thompson, I breathed. He must have found me in the kitchen and dragged me out the back door to the lawn. Dr. Lawson smiled gently. The mind has a remarkable way of protecting and preserving important information. These memories were there all along, waiting for you to be ready to process them. But I wasn't done. Another memory surfaced, this one sharp with emotional clarity rather than physical detail. I heard Mom. I said, tears streaming down my face. When Diane was carrying me past the stairs, I heard Mom screaming from the bedroom. She was calling my name, begging someone to save me. Her voice was desperate, raw. She knew you were in danger, Dr. Lawson said softly. She was fighting. I could hear things breaking, crashing. She was trying so hard to get out, to get to me. The memory was almost too painful to bear. The last thing I heard her say was, "Please, not my baby. Take me, but save my baby." The room fell silent except for my sobbing. Dr. Lawson handed me tissues, waiting patiently while I processed the recovered trauma. "There's more," I said when I could speak again. "After Diane dropped me before Mr. Thompson found me, I heard her on the phone. She was panicked, almost screaming. 'The neighbor's here. What do I do?' And then I heard Dad's voice tinny through her phone speaker, but clear. 'Get out now. Stick to the plan. I'll handle it.' Can you remember anything else he said?" I concentrated, pulling at the edges of the memory. "Yes," he said, "the kid has to be found outside. Make sure Thompson sees her on the lawn before you leave." They knew Mr. Thompson had arrived. They wanted him to find me, to be a witness that I'd escaped. The calculated cruelty of it stole my breath. While Mom was dying trapped in her room, they were orchestrating my discovery to support their narrative, every detail planned except for Diane's panic, leading her to drop me in the wrong location. "One more thing," I said, a final fragment clicking into place. As Mr. Thompson was dragging me outside, I heard sirens in the distance, but the fire had just started. How were they already coming? Dr. Lawson looked thoughtful. "That's an excellent question, something to share with Detective Chen." The session ended there, but the memories continued to surface over the following hours. Small details that painted a fuller picture, the sound of glass breaking from Mom's room as she tried desperately to escape, the acrid smell of gasoline on Diane's clothes, the feeling of grass stains on my pajamas from being dragged across the lawn. Chen arrived that evening to review the recovered memories. Her expression grew grimmer with each detail. "This changes things," she said. "If Diane was supposed to position you outside but dropped you in the kitchen instead, that's why the crime scene never made complete sense. You weren't supposed to be found inside at all." Mr. Thompson saved my life, I realized. If he hadn't arrived when he did, you'd have been found in the garage, supposedly overcome by smoke while trying to escape with your mother, Chen finished. 2 victims of a tragic accident with Harold as the grieving sole survivor. "But Mom would have been found barricaded in her room," I pointed out. "They had a story for that too, I'm sure. Maybe she barricaded herself in panic, not realizing she was trapping herself. Or maybe they planned to go back and remove the barricade after the fire had done its work. With both of you dead, who could contradict whatever story Harold told? The full horror of their plans settled over me. I was never meant to survive. My drugged sleep was supposed to be permanent. Only Diane's panic and Mr. Thompson's heroism had derailed their carefully crafted double murder. "Can we use these memories in court?" I asked. "Recovered memories are tricky legally," Chen admitted, "but they're giving us leads to pursue. Now, we know to check phone records for Diane's call to Harold during the fire. We know to interview Mr. Thompson more thoroughly about what he saw. We know their plan went wrong, which means there might be more evidence of their scrambling to adapt." She paused, studying me carefully. "There's something else. The fact that you heard emergency sirens so early is significant. I'm going to check if anyone else called 911 before Mr. Thompson." "Who would have—" I started, then stopped. Oh my God, Mom had her cell phone if she managed to call before the smoke got too thick. "We'll check," Chen promised. "Every detail you've remembered helps us build the case. Your mother would be proud of how strong you're being." But I didn't feel strong. I felt hollowed out by the weight of remembering, by the knowledge that I'd been seconds away from joining Mom in death. The sleeping pills that had kept me unconscious had saved me in ways she never intended, preventing me from calling out and revealing my location to Diane. Even drugged and marked for death, I'd survived through a series of coincidences that felt almost like Mom's protection from beyond. Her timing with the sedatives, Mr. Thompson's insomnia leading him to notice the flames, Diane's panic breaking their carefully laid plans. "What now?" I asked Chen. "Now we use everything you've given us. We're getting warrants for phone records, reviewing all the 911 calls from that night, bringing Mr. Thompson in for a more detailed interview. Every memory you've recovered is another nail in their coffin." As she left, I lay back in the hospital bed, exhausted by the effort of remembering. But the memories wouldn't stop coming now that the dam had broken. Mom's voice echoed in my mind, her final words, a mother's desperate plea for her child's life. "Please, not my baby." She'd gotten her wish, though it cost her everything. I was alive, traumatized, but breathing, remembering, but surviving. And with each recovered memory, I moved closer to the justice she'd died trying to ensure. The insurance investigator arrived unannounced, catching Harold off guard as he was helping me settle into the rental condo. Marcus Fitzgerald was nothing like the investigators I'd seen on TV. Small and unassuming, with thick glasses and a nervous habit of clicking his pen, he looked more like an accountant than someone who unraveled fraud for a living. "Mr. Garrett, I'm from Midwest Mutual Life. I need to discuss your wife's policy." Harold's face cycled through several expressions before settling on confused concern. "Is there a problem? I filed all the paperwork your company requested." "May we speak privately?" Fitzgerald glanced at me apologetically. "These matters can be delicate." "Anything you need to say can be said in front of my daughter," Harold replied, but I caught the tension in his voice. He didn't want to appear secretive, but he also didn't want me hearing whatever Fitzgerald had to say. "Actually, Dad, I'm tired. I'll go rest in my room." I gave them both a wan smile and retreated to the bedroom, carefully leaving the door cracked. The recording app Chen had installed on my phone activated silently. "Mr. Garrett." Fitzgerald began, his voice carrying clearly. "There are some irregularities with your wife's policy that we need to discuss, specifically the recent increase in coverage and the beneficiary changes." "I don't understand," Harold said. "Everything was done through proper channels." "Perhaps, but we've discovered that your wife's signature on the coverage increase form doesn't match her signature on other documents. Our handwriting experts have concerns." There was a pause. I could imagine Harold calculating his response, weighing options. "Sarah had been having some health issues," he said finally. "Arthritis in her hands. Her handwriting had become inconsistent. Arthritis that's not mentioned in any of her medical records." Fitzgerald's tone was mild, but the implication was clear. She didn't like doctors, refused to go for minor issues. "I see. And can you explain why the beneficiary change form was submitted from a computer at your office rather than your home?" Another pause, longer this time. "I often handled our financial matters from work. better internet connection. Of course, though it's interesting that the form was submitted at 2:17 a.m., rather late to be at the office. I heard Harold shift in his chair. I've been having trouble sleeping. Sometimes I go to the office when I can't rest. Better than disturbing Sarah. Better than disturbing my wife. The slip was telling. Even now he had trouble speaking of her in the past tense when lying. Mr. Garrett, I'll be direct, Fitzgerald continued. The policy increased the signature discrepancies, the beneficiary changes, and now your wife's death in a fire that's under investigation for arson. You understand why the company has concerns. Are you suggesting I had something to do with my wife's death? Harold's voice rose, indignation covering fear. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm simply informing you that the claim is under review pending the outcome of all investigations. No payments will be made until we're satisfied that everything is in order. This is outrageous. My wife is dead, my daughter traumatized, and you're withholding money. We need to rebuild our lives. I understand this is difficult, Fitzgerald said, not sounding sympathetic at all. But $2 million is a significant sum. The company has a responsibility to ensure all claims are legitimate. How long will this review take? That depends on what the investigations uncover. Could be weeks, could be months, could be never if fraud is determined. I heard a sound like a fist hitting the table. I'll sue. My lawyer will be in touch. That's your right, of course, though I should mention that if fraud is proven, you'll not only lose the claim, but could face criminal charges. Insurance fraud is a felony, Mr. Garrett. Get out! Harold said, his voice low and dangerous. Get out of my home. One more thing, Fitzgerald said, and I heard papers rustling. Were you aware your wife had taken out her own policy 6 months ago? One that names your daughter as sole beneficiary. The silence stretched so long I thought they'd moved out of earshot. Then Harold spoke, his voice barely controlled. No, I wasn't aware. Interesting. Well, that policy is being processed normally since there are no irregularities. Your daughter will receive $1 million once the death certificate is finalized. I thought you should know as her guardian. Footsteps moved toward the door. We'll be in touch, Mr. Garrett. I'd advise against any travel until this matter is resolved. After Fitzgerald left, I heard Harold on the phone, his voice urgent and angry. We have a problem. The insurance company is balking. I don't care what you thought would happen. This is your mess too. No, she doesn't remember anything but that investigator. I couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but I knew it was Diane. Their perfect plan was crumbling, and the desperation in Harold's voice was palpable. The other policy? Yes, $1 million to Pam directly. I had no idea, Sarah. Of course, this changes things. We need to meet. Tonight. He hung up, and I heard him pacing, muttering curses. Then his footsteps approached my door. I quickly lay down, closing my eyes as he peered in. Pam, you awake? I didn't respond, keeping my breathing deep and even. After a moment, he retreated. Minutes later, I heard the front door close and his car start. I immediately texted Chen. Harold just left to meet Diane. Insurance investigator visited. Claim denied pending investigation. Mom had secret policy for me. Her response was swift. Following him. Stay put. Lock doors. But I couldn't just wait. I searched the condo, looking for anything Harold might have hidden. In his bedroom closet, I found a laptop bag I didn't recognize. Inside was a tablet password protected, but the password hint made me smile grimly. First wife's name. Linda. I typed it in and the tablet unlocked. What I found made my blood run cold. Spreadsheets detailing his debts with payments to Torino highlighted in red. The amounts were staggering, and notes indicated threats of increasing violence. One entry from the week before the fire simply read, Final warning, payment or consequences. There were emails too, drafts never sent. One to Diane. Can't wait anymore. T's men came to the office today. It has to be this week. Another more chilling. Both of them. It's the only way to get enough. I'm sorry, but one won't cover what we need. Both of them. He'd been planning to kill both of us, just as Chen had suspected. The only reason I was alive was because Mom's secret policy made me valuable again, but only if he maintained the grieving father act. I photographed everything with my phone, then found something else. A folder labeled Research. Inside were articles about house fires, insurance investigations, how long DNA evidence lasted in fire damage. But there was also something unexpected articles about insulin overdoses, untraceable poisons, making murder look like natural death. One article was bookmarked, Delayed Action Toxins, How Long-Term Poisoning Can Mimic Natural Illness. My hands shook as I photographed this too. Had he been poisoning Mom before the fire? Is that why she'd seemed tired lately? Why she'd mentioned feeling unwell in her journal? A new message from Chen. He's at Diane's apartment. Team in position. Get out now. Go to hospital. Say you felt sick. We're moving tonight. I grabbed my purse and called an Uber, my heart pounding. As I waited outside, I saw a car drive slowly past. One of Torino's men, the ones from the surveillance photos. They were watching Harold too, waiting for their money. At the hospital, I was immediately taken to a secure room where Chen waited with a full team. We've got enough, she said. The tablet evidence combined with everything else gives us probable cause. We're arresting them tonight. What about Torino's men? I asked. FBI is handling that angle. Turns out your father's gambling debts are tied to a larger racketeering case. Your evidence just broke it wide open. I thought about Mom's secret policy, her final protection, ensuring I'd be financially secure even if Harold succeeded in stealing the rest. Even in death, she was still saving me. There's something else, Chen said. The insurance investigator, Fitzgerald, he's been building a case against Harold for months. Your mother contacted him before she died, raised concerns about the policy changes. He was already suspicious when the fire happened. Another piece of Mom's plan, another safeguard she'd put in place. She'd known she might not survive, but she'd done everything possible to ensure justice would. What happens now? I asked. Now we spring the trap your mother laid, Chen said. She lit the fuse, remember? Time to watch it burn. Aunt Grace arrived from Seattle, looking like she'd aged 10 years in the week since Mom's death. Her red hair, so similar to Mom's, was pulled back in a messy bun, and her eyes were swollen from crying. But when she hugged me in the hospital's secure room, her grip was fierce with determination. I brought everything, she said, setting down a laptop bag with reverent care. Sarah sent me this 2 days before the fire. I haven't looked at most of it. I couldn't. But Detective Chen said you needed to see it all. Chen had gathered a small team in the conference room. Along with the prosecutor assigned to the case, there was a tech specialist and another detective. They treated Mom's laptop like evidence in a capital case, which I suppose it was. Your mother was remarkably thorough, the tech specialist said, as he connected the laptop to a larger screen. She created an encrypted folder system with timestamps for everything. It's like she was building a legal case. Because she was, I thought. She knew she might need proof that would stand up in court either for divorce or for something worse. Let's start with the audio files, Chen suggested. There are dozens here, all labeled by date and subject. The first recording was from 3 months ago. Mom's voice filled the room, calm but careful. March 15th, Harold came home at 3 a.m. intoxicated. When I asked where he'd been, he grabbed my wrist hard enough to leave marks. He said I should mind my own business if I knew what was good for me. This is the 3rd time he's been physical during an argument. I'm documenting this for my protection. Aunt Grace reached for my hand as we listened to recording after recording. Mom had captured Harold's escalating threats, his discussions of money problems, his increasingly erratic behavior. She'd been smart, often, starting recordings on her phone before difficult conversations. April 22nd. Mom's voice continued in another file. Harold doesn't know I'm recording. I'm going to ask about the credit card charges. We heard rustling. Then Harold's voice, distant but clear. Why are you going through my statements? They're our statements, Harold. We're married, and I need to know why there's $8,000 charged to something called VT Enterprises. Business expense. Nothing for you to worry about. $8,000 isn't nothing. We have a mortgage payment due. The sound of a chair scraping. Harold's voice got louder, angrier. I said it's handled. Stop questioning me, Sarah. You have no idea what I'm dealing with. Then tell me we're supposed to be partners. A crash, like something being thrown. Partners! You want to be partners! Fine, we owe Vincent Torino $300,000. Happy now, feel like a partner. Mom's sharp intake of breath was audible. Vincent, the crime family Torino Herald, what have you done? What I had to do to keep this family afloat, but don't worry, I have a plan. What kind of plan? The kind you don't need to know about. Just trust me. The recording ended there. Chen paused the playback. She was building evidence of his motive. Financial pressure from organized crime is a classic catalyst for desperate action. There's more, the tech specialist said. This folder is labeled Diane Evidence. The next recordings were harder to hear. Mom had somehow managed to record Harold's calls with Diane, probably by hiding her phone near his home office. Their affair was obvious, but more damning was their discussion of Mom as an obstacle. She knows, Diane's voice said in one recording. Sarah came to the office today asking questions about the Peterson contract. She knows the numbers don't add up. I'll handle Sarah, Harold replied. Just keep the books looking clean for now. For how long, Harold? This isn't sustainable. We need a permanent solution. I said I'll handle it. Trust me, in a few months, Sarah won't be a problem anymore. The casual way he discussed eliminating Mom made my stomach turn. But the most devastating recording was yet to come. This one is from the week before the fire. Grace said, her voice thick with tears. Sarah called me, said if anything happened, I should give this to police. Mom's voice when it came was different, frightened but determined. May 2nd, I'm in my car outside a motel. Harold's inside with Diane. He told me he was at a client dinner. I followed him. They've been in there 2 hours. We heard car doors, muffled voices, then clearer Harold's voice through what must have been a cracked motel window. Tomorrow night. Sarah takes sleeping pills sometimes. I'll crush extra into her wine. Once she's out, we execute the plan. What about Pam? Diane's voice. She'll be collateral damage. Tragic, but necessary. The insurance doubles if they both die. Torino wants his money, and this is the only way. I don't know if I can. You can and you will. We've come too far to back out now. Think about our future. The money will set us free. There was a long pause, then Diane again. How? Electrical fire. I've been complaining about the wiring to neighbors for weeks. After they're unconscious, we start it in 2 places. Make sure neither can escape. By the time anyone notices, it'll be too late. And you'll be in Columbus, checked into a hotel's security cameras showing me nowhere near home. You'll handle things here, then meet me later. We console each other through the tragedy, and in a few months, we're together officially. Mom's voice returned, shaking. They're planning to kill us, both of us. I have to get Pam out. I'm calling Grace, then the police. If something happens before I can stop them, this is evidence. Harold Garrett and Diane Hutchinson are planning to murder Pam and me for insurance money. The recording ended. The room was silent except for Grace's quiet sobbing. She never called the police, Chen said quietly. She was planning to leave with you first, then contact authorities from safety. She was trying to protect you until the last possible moment. But they moved up their timeline, I said numbly. They found out she was leaving and acted early. The next file confirms that, the tech specialist said. It's from the night she died. Timestamp shows 11:47 p.m. Mom's voice urgent and terrified. Harold's home. He's not supposed to be here. He knows. God, he knows I was leaving. I'm locked in the bedroom. Pam's unconscious from the sleeping pills I gave her. I meant to carry her to the car, but Harold's in the hallway. He's got gasoline. I can smell it. I'm calling 911 now. We heard the sound of her dialing, then a tremendous crash. Harold's voice enraged. "Open the door, Sarah. You thought you could leave. Take my daughter. Steal from me." "I have evidence," Mom screamed. "The police know everything. If you hurt us, you'll never get away with it." "Police? You called the police." "They're on their way." Another crash. Then Harold cold now. "Then we'd better hurry. Diane, change of plans. Burn it all now." The sound of Mom's frantic 911 call began. "Fire, my husband setting fire to our house. 1243 Elm Street. My daughter's inside. Please hurry. He's trying to kill us." The dispatcher's voice. "Ma'am, stay calm. Can you get to a window?" "He's barricaded the door. The windows are painted shut. Please, my baby's in the next room. Save my daughter." More crashing, Mom coughing. "Sarah Garrett. My name is Sarah Garrett. My husband Harold is committing arson with Diane Hutchinson for insurance money. Save my daughter Tam." The recording became chaotic. Smoke alarms blaring, Mom coughing violently, pounding on windows. Her last coherent words before the recording cut off. "Tell Pam I love her. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her to be strong." The conference room was tomb silent. Grace was sobbing openly now. Even the hardened detectives looked shaken. "She made sure to name them," Chen said quietly. "Even dying, she was building the case. The 911 recording is admissible evidence. She identified her killers in real time." "That's why the sirens came so fast," I realized. "Mom called before Mr. Thompson. She's the reason help arrived in time to save me." Chen nodded. "Your mother died a hero, Pam. She used her last moments to save you and ensure justice. This recording alone would convict them, but combined with everything else." "They're finished," the prosecutor said firmly. "This is the cleanest murder case I've seen in 20 years. Your mother built it perfectly even as she died." Grace pulled out one last item, a sealed envelope with my name on it. "She included this in the package. Said it was just for you when you were ready." I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a photo of Mom and me from last Christmas, both of us laughing at something off camera, on the back in her neat handwriting. "My darling Pam, if you're reading this, then my worst fears came true, but you survived, and that's all that matters. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better, couldn't be stronger or smarter or faster, but know that every choice I made was to keep you safe. Don't let hatred poison your beautiful heart. Live fully, love freely, help others as I tried to help you. You are my greatest accomplishment, my proudest moment, my eternal love. Be happy, my sweet girl. That's all I ever wanted. Forever, your loving mother, Sarah." I held the photo to my chest, feeling Mom's presence so strongly it took my breath away. She'd known she might die. She'd prepared for it, accepted it, used it as a weapon against her killers. The ultimate sacrifice wrapped in the ultimate victory. "When do we arrest them?" I asked Chen, my voice steady despite my tears. "Shit, tonight," she replied. "Your father's at Diane's apartment now. We have teams in position. Would you like to be there when we take them?" I thought of Mom's last words, her plea for justice, even as flames consumed her. I thought of Linda Morrison, dead 15 years without justice. I thought of whoever might have been next if we hadn't stopped them. "Yes," I said firmly. "I want to see their faces when they realize Mom won, that even in death she destroyed them." Chen smiled grimly. "Then let's go finish what your mother started." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. I would return to the condo, pretend my memory was returning in fragments, and make Harold nervous enough to contact Diane. Chen's team had already planted listening devices throughout the apartment during my hospital stay. Every word would be recorded, every phone call monitored. Remember, Chen coached me as we sat in an unmarked van outside the building. "You're confused, vulnerable. The memories are hazy, disturbing. You're seeking comfort from the only parent you have left." I nodded, the wire taped to my ribs, feeling like armor. "Make him think he can control the narrative." "Exactly. Let him guide you toward his version of events. The more he talks, the more he'll reveal." I entered the condo to find Harold pacing the living room, his phone pressed to his ear. He ended the call abruptly when he saw me. Pam, where were you? I came home and you were gone. His concern seemed genuine, but I now knew what a skilled actor he was. I went back to the hospital, I said, making my voice small and uncertain. I've been having these episodes, memories, but they don't make sense. He guided me to the couch, his face a mask of fatherly concern. What kind of memories? Fragments. Voices. I remember being carried, but I paused, watching his face carefully. It wasn't you, was it? The person who carried me out. Harold's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The doctors said trauma can create false memories. What do you think you remember? A woman's voice. Familiar. She was saying something about packages, about a clean scene. I let my voice tremble. Dad, why would someone be talking about a scene at our house? You were probably hearing firefighters, he said quickly. They have to assess scenes, look for victims. Your mind is mixing things up. I shook my head slowly. No, this was before. During the fire, but before the firefighters came. And the perfume. Expensive perfume mixed with smoke. Harold stood abruptly, walking to the window. I could see his reflection, the calculation in his eyes. Pam, I need to ask you something important. Have you talked to anyone else about these memories? The detective maybe... Should I asked innocently. Detective Chen left her card. She said to call if I remembered anything. No. The word came out sharp, and he immediately softened his tone. I mean, we should be careful. False memories can complicate investigations, make it harder to find the truth. Maybe we should talk through what you think you remember. First, see if we can make sense of it together. Okay, I agreed. There's something else. I remember Mom's voice. She was screaming, begging someone to save me, but she sounded trapped. Harold returned to sit beside me, taking my hands in his. His palms were sweating. Your mother died trying to save you, sweetheart. Maybe you're remembering her calling out as she got you to safety. But I was found on the lawn and she was in the bedroom. How did she get me outside if she was trapped? I watched him process this logic trap. His story didn't work if I was remembering clearly. He needed to redirect me, reshape my memories to fit his narrative. Maybe, he said carefully, maybe she got you to your window, first helped you escape, then went back for something. That would explain why you remember her voice from inside the house. What would she go back for? Photo albums, maybe important papers. You know how your mother was about family memories. The cruelty of using Mom's sentimentality against her made me want to scream, but I just nodded, letting him think he was succeeding. Actually, I said, as if just remembering, I think I heard another man's voice, someone talking to the woman with the perfume. He sounded angry, said something about sticking to the plan. Harold's hand tightened on mine painfully. That must have been the firefighters talking to each other. Plans for rescue evacuation. You were very confused, honey. Maybe, I said doubtfully. Then with calculated timing, the woman's voice. Dad, it sounded like Diane. Harold released my hands and stood in one fluid motion. That's impossible. Diane was at home that night. She lives across town. How do you know where she was? The question hung in the air. Harold realized his mistake immediately. Why would he know his secretary's whereabouts at 2 a.m? She called me, he said, scrambling. When she heard about the fire on the news the next morning, mentioned she'd been up late watching movies, saw the breaking news alert. Oh, I said, then added casually, that's strange. I thought the fire wasn't on the news until the afternoon edition. I remember the nurses talking about it. Harold's face had gone pale. He pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. I must be confused about the timeline. It's all been such a blur. Dad, I said softly, is there something you're not telling me about the night, about Mom? He looked at me then, and for a moment I saw real calculation in his eyes. He was weighing options, risks, possibilities. How much did I actually remember? How much danger was he in? Pam, He said finally, I need to make a call, business issue. Why don't you rest? We can talk more about your memories later. Okay, I agreed. I am tired. These memories are exhausting. I went to my room but left the door cracked just as before. Harold's urgent voice carried clearly. We have a problem. She's remembering things. No, not everything, but enough. She mentioned you by name. I don't know how much the neighbor saw. We need to meet. Tonight. A pause as he listened. No, not here. The park on 5th Street. 1 hour. Bring everything. We might need to run. My phone vibrated with a text from Chen. Perfect. Keep pushing when he returns. Harold knocked on my door 20 minutes later. Pam, I need to run out for a bit. Will you be okay alone? I opened the door, making my face worried. Dad, you're scaring me. What's going on? Nothing, sweetheart. Just some business complications. I'll be back soon. Is this about Mom's insurance? The investigator seemed really suspicious. His face darkened. That man is just doing his job. Don't worry about it. But what if they don't pay? What if they think... I let my voice trail off meaningfully. Think what... His voice was sharp now. Nothing. It's just... I heard you and Mom arguing about money before, about owing someone dangerous. And now she's dead and there's insurance money and... I let tears fill my eyes. Dad, you didn't. You wouldn't. The accusation hung between us. Harold's face cycled through emotions, shock, hurt, anger before settling on wounded father. How could you even think that? He asked, but his voice lacked conviction. I loved your mother. Then why were you with Diane? The words tumbled out unplanned but effective. I saw the credit card statements in Mom's desk, the hotel charges. I know about the affair. Harold stepped back as if I'd slapped him. How long have you known? Mom told me she was leaving you. I lied smoothly. The night before the fire. She said you were dangerous, that we had to get away. But I didn't believe her. I thought she was being paranoid. She was paranoid, Harold said quickly. Delusional, making up stories about affairs and danger. I was trying to get her help. Then why did she change her will? Why did she hide money? Why was her car packed? I pressed on each question a dagger. Why did she tell Aunt Grace you killed your first wife? The last accusation destroyed any pretense. Harold's mask finally slipped, completely revealing the cornered animal beneath. You don't know what you're talking about, he snarled. Your mother was sick, mentally ill. She created elaborate fantasies, made wild accusations. No one believed her. The police believe her, I said quietly. Detective Chen showed me the evidence Mom collected. The recordings, the photos, the proof about Linda Morrison. They know Dad. They know everything. Harold went very still. When he spoke, his voice was different. Colder, the voice from Mom's recordings. What did you tell them? The truth, I said, lifting my chin. That my mother was murdered by her husband and his mistress for insurance money, that you killed before and would kill again, that you're a monster who deserves to burn just like Mom did. The transformation was complete. The loving father facade crumbled entirely, leaving only the predator Mom had seen at the end. You stupid little bitch, he hissed. Just like your mother, always meddling, always asking questions. Do you have any idea what you've done? Yes, I said steadily. I've finished what Mom started. I've destroyed you. He advanced on me, and for a moment I thought he might attack, but then his phone rang, Diane probably wondering why he was late for their meeting. He answered without taking his eyes off me. Change of plans. The kid knows everything. No, it's too late for that. Just get to the meet point. We're leaving tonight. He hung up and grabbed my arm roughly. You're coming with me. No, I said, jerking away. I'm done being your victim. You'll do what I say, he snarled, reaching for me again. One more body won't matter now. But I was ready. Chen had made sure of that. The panic button in my pocket brought instant response. The door burst open, officers flooding in with weapons drawn. Harold Garrett, you're under arrest for the murder of Sarah Garrett, conspiracy to commit murder insurance fraud. The list went on, but I stopped listening. I watched as they cuffed him as his face contorted with rage and finally defeat. He looked at me one last time, and I saw him clearly. Not my father. Never my father. Just the man who killed my mother. Diane Hutchinson is already in custody, Chen told me as they led Harold away. Picked her up at the park. She had fake IDs and cash ready to run. Is it over? I asked. The arrests are just the beginning, Chen said. But with the recordings, the evidence, and what you just got him to admit, they're finished. Your mother made sure of that. As the condo emptied of police, I stood alone in the sudden silence. The wire under my shirt had captured everything. Harold's confession, his threats, his final revelation of the monster he'd always been. Mom's plan executed perfectly through her daughter's courage. I did it, Mom, I whispered to the empty room. Just like you taught me. The truth won. The interrogation room videos arrived 3 days later. Chen thought I should see them understand the full scope of what we'd uncovered. I sat in the prosecutor's office watching Diane Hutchinson crumble on the screen. She'd been composed at first, still trying to play the loyal secretary caught up in her boss's crimes. But Chen was methodical, laying out evidence piece by piece until the facade shattered completely. We have your phone records, Chen said on the video. Every call to Harold, every text about handling the problem, every search for accelerants and fire patterns. Diane's attorney whispered urgently in her ear, but she waved him off. The weight of evidence was crushing her carefully constructed walls. You don't understand, Diane said, her voice cracking. Harold promised me everything. A life together, freedom from my ex-husband, a future. He said Sarah was abusive, that she was threatening to destroy his business out of spite. So you helped him murder her? Chen's voice was ice. It wasn't supposed to be murder, Diane exploded. The original plan was different. We were going to make her look unstable, get her committed, take control of the finances. No one was supposed to die. What changed? Diane's perfectly manicured nails dug into the metal table. Vincent, Torino. Harold owed him so much money. They came to the office, threatened both of us. Said they'd kill me too if Harold didn't pay. The insurance was the only way. Tell me about the night of the fire, Chen pressed. On the screen, Diane began to sob. Not the pretty tears she displayed at the hospital, but raw, ugly crying that smeared her makeup beyond recognition. Harold called me frantic. Sarah had discovered everything. The affairs, the debts, the plan about Linda. She was leaving with Pam. He said it had to be that night or we'd both go to prison. So you went to the house. I brought the accelerants. Harold had been researching for weeks, knew exactly how to make it look electrical. I was supposed to wait until he'd subdued them both, then set specific ignition points. Both of them, Chen repeated. You knew Pam would be there. Diane's sobs intensified. Harold said the insurance would double with both deaths, said Pam was drugged, wouldn't feel anything, said it was merciful compared to what Torino would do to all of us. What happened when you got there? Everything was chaos. Sarah had barricaded herself in the bedroom, screaming. Harold was trying to break down the door. He'd already poured gasoline in Pam's room, told me to start there while he handled Sarah. But you didn't just start the fire, did you? Diane looked up, her face ravaged. I went to check on Pam first. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me couldn't. She was so young, so innocent. I found her unconscious in her bed. And then? I picked her up. I was going to put her in the car with Sarah's things, make it look like they both died trying to escape. But then I heard Harold with Sarah, heard her begging for Pam's life. She was so desperate, so broken. She kept saying, "Take me, but save my baby." Is that when Mr. Thompson arrived? His headlights lit up the whole kitchen. I panicked, dropped Pam, and ran out the back. Harold was screaming at me through the phone to stick to the plan, but I just wanted to get away. You left Pam to die, Chen stated flatly. No, I knew Thompson would find her. I made sure she was visible from the door. I'm not a complete monster. You set fire to a house with 2 women inside. What would you call that? Diane's attorney tried to intervene, but she was past caring. I lit Pam's room first, like Harold said, then the master bedroom door. The garage ignition failed. Too much gasoline. I heard sirens and ran. What did Harold say afterward? He was furious that I'd moved. Pam said it complicated everything. But when she survived, he adapted. Said we could use her for sympathy, still get the money. He was already planning to kill her later, make it look like suicide from grief. I had to pause the video. The casual discussion of my planned death, like I was an inconvenient detail in their scheme, made me physically ill. Chen had warned me, but hearing it was different. When I resumed, Diane was bargaining. I'll testify, tell you everything. Harold killed Linda Morrison, I'm sure of it. He told me things when he was drunk, details about her death that weren't public. He's a serial killer who uses fire as his weapon. Tell me about Linda, Chen encouraged. He said she was going to leave him just like Sarah. Said he'd learned from that experience, knew how to do it better the second time. He kept newspaper clippings about her death in a safe deposit box like trophies. Where's the box? First National downtown branch. I have the key. I kept it for insurance in case he ever turned on me. She laughed bitterly. Lot of good it did me. The interrogation continued for hours. Diane detailed Harold's gambling addiction, his connections to organized crime, his increasing violence toward Mom in the months before her death. She revealed financial crimes, embezzlement from clients, a web of fraud that extended far beyond murder. He was planning to run, she said near the end, had fake passports made for both of us. Once the insurance paid out, we were going to disappear to Costa Rica. He had it all planned. Except Sarah Garrett had plans of her own, Chen observed. She was smarter than he thought, smarter than both of us. She knew what was coming and prepared for it. Even dead, she won. The bitterness in Diane's voice was palpable. The video ended with Diane being led back to her cell, shuffling in her designer heels and wrinkled dress. She looked like what she was, a woman who traded her soul for promises of love and money only to lose everything. Chen entered the prosecutor's office as I finished watching. She pled guilty this morning, 25 to life possibility of parole in 20. She'll testify against Harold. 25 years, I repeated. Mom will never see another day, but her killer gets a chance at freedom. It's not justice, Chen agreed, but it's what we can get. Harold will never see daylight again, I promise you that. Linda Morrison's case has been officially reopened. With Diane's testimony and the evidence from the safe deposit box, he'll face multiple murder charges. What was in the box? Chen's expression darkened. Trophies. Photos of Linda's house before and after the fire. Her obituary laminated. A copy of the insurance check. And a list. A list. Names of women. Some crossed off, including Linda and Sarah. Others still unmarked. We think they were potential victims. Women with life insurance policies worth killing for. My stomach turned. He was hunting. For 15 years. Your mother stopped a serial killer, Pam. She saved not just you, but all those unmarked names. I thought about those unknown women living their lives unaware they'd been marked for death by a charming man with gambling debts. Mom's sacrifice had saved them all. There's something else, Chen said gently. Diane confirmed Harold was poisoning your mother. Small doses of antifreeze in her coffee, not enough to kill quickly, but enough to make her weak, confused. He'd been doing it for months. The fatigue Mom had mentioned, the dizzy spells she'd attributed to stress, all of it orchestrated by the man sharing her bed. Why, I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. To make her seem unstable. If she'd tried to leave earlier, he could have claimed mental illness. Had her committed taken control of everything. The fire only became necessary when she discovered too much moved too fast. Every revelation added another layer of horror. How long had Mom lived in danger? How many times had she kissed her killer goodnight, unaware of the poison in her system? One more thing, Chen said. We found Harold's burner phone, the one he used to contact Torino's men. He'd been negotiating with them. Negotiating? Trading information about police investigations for more time on his debts. He was going to give them details about ongoing cases he'd overheard from clients. Corrupt to the core. I left the prosecutor's office feeling hollow. Each new detail painted Harold as more monstrous than I'd imagined. But it also highlighted Mom's courage. She'd lived with this creature, fought him, and ultimately defeated him even at the cost of her life. That night, I played Mom's final recording again, her voice strong despite the smoke and fear, naming her killers and begging for my safety. She'd known she was dying, but used her last moments to ensure justice. "Tell Pam I love her. Tell her to be strong." "I am Mom," I whispered to the darkness, "strong enough to see this through to the end." The morning of Harold's trial arrived gray and oppressive, matching my mood perfectly. I dressed carefully in the black suit Mom had bought me for job interviews, thinking how she'd never imagined I'd wear it to see her killer convicted. Aunt Grace stood beside me on the courthouse steps, her hand steady on my back as reporters shouted questions. It's Garrett. How do you feel about facing your father?" Pam, did you know about the affair? Will you forgive him?" We pushed through without answering. Inside, the prosecutor, James Walsh, met us with a grim smile. "Ready for this?" "Beyond ready," I assured him. The courtroom was packed. I recognized Mr. Thompson in the gallery, the neighbor whose insomnia had saved my life. Several of Mom's friends were there, tissues already in hand. On the other side, a few of Harold's construction workers sat looking uncomfortable, probably subpoenaed as character witnesses. Then they brought him in. Harold had aged years in the months since his arrest. His hair, once perfectly styled, hung limp and gray. The orange jumpsuit hung on his diminished frame. But his eyes, when they found mine, still held that calculating coldness I'd finally learned to recognize. He tried to smile at me, a father's loving smile seeking forgiveness. I stared back without expression, letting him see nothing but stone. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Nolan. The trial began with opening statements. Walsh laid out the case methodically, a pattern of murder for profit spanning 15 years, 2 dead wives, 1 surviving daughter who'd nearly joined them. The defense attorney, a public defender who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, argued for reasonable doubt, claimed the evidence was circumstantial. Then came the evidence that buried him. The prosecution calls Detective Sarah Chen. Chen took the stand with a box of evidence that represented months of investigation. She walked the jury through everything: the forged insurance documents, the accelerant patterns, the security footage. But the most damning evidence was yet to come. "Detective Chen, what did you find in the defendant's safe deposit box?" Chen produced an evidence bag. Items related to the death of Linda Morrison, the defendant's first wife, including this. She held up a singed piece of fabric. "This is a section of curtain from Linda Morrison's bedroom. Testing confirms it has accelerant residue matching the pattern used in the Garrett house fire 15 years later. The defendant kept a piece of the murder weapon as a trophy." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Even Harold's attorney looked sick. "We also found this." Chen continued producing a leather journal, the defendant's own handwriting documenting his gambling debts and plans to solve the Linda problem. Entry dated 2 weeks before Linda Morrison's death. Walsh entered the journal into evidence, then played Mom's recordings. Her voice filled the courtroom strong and clear, documenting Harold's threats, his admission of the Torino debts, his affair with Diane. Several jurors wiped tears as they heard her final 911 call. "My husband's setting fire to our house. My daughter's inside. He's trying to kill us." Harold's facade cracked as Mom named him as her killer with her dying breath. Next came the surprise witness. The prosecution calls Margaret Morrison. Linda's sister walked to the stand with quiet dignity. 15 years of waiting for justice showed in every line of her face. Ms. Morrison, tell us about your sister's marriage to the defendant. Margaret's testimony was devastating. Letters from Linda describing Harold's gambling, his violence, her plans to leave. Photos of bruises Linda had sent her. A voicemail from the night before Linda died. I'm scared, Maggie. He knows I'm leaving. If something happens to me, it's not an accident. Why didn't you come forward 15 years ago? Walsh asked gently. I tried. The fire was ruled accidental. No one would listen to a grieving sister with no proof. But I never stopped believing Harold killed her. When I heard about Sarah Garrett's death, the same circumstances, I knew I had to speak out. The forensic evidence came next. Fire patterns that screamed arson. DNA evidence placing both Harold and Diane at specific locations in the house. The failed ignition in the garage proving premeditation. But the moment that truly sealed Harold's fate came when they played the video from my wire. You stupid little bitch, just like your mother, always meddling, always asking questions. The jury watched Harold threaten me, admit to everything in his rage. Several jurors looked at him with open disgust. When Diane took the stand as a prosecution witness, Harold's last hope died. She detailed everything. The planning, the affairs, the murder plot. Her testimony was clinical, devastating in its precision. He said burning them was merciful compared to what Torino would do. Said the smoke would knock them out before the flames reached them. He'd researched it extensively. Did the defendant express any remorse about planning to kill his daughter? No, he said Pam was collateral damage, necessary for the insurance payout. I had to leave the courtroom during her testimony, Grace following as I retched in the bathroom. Hearing my death discussed like a business transaction was more than I could bear. When I returned, Walsh was playing Harold's jailhouse calls. He'd been stupid enough to call associates trying to arrange alibis, threatening potential witnesses. Every call had been recorded. If that bitch Diane talks, I'll make sure she burns too. No one crosses me and lives. Even from jail, he was plotting murder. The defense's case was pathetic. A few character witnesses claiming Harold was a good boss, an expert arguing that grief could cause false confessions. Harold himself didn't testify. His attorney knew that would be suicide. Closing arguments were brief. Walsh simply pointed to the mountain of evidence, the pattern of murder, the recorded confessions. The defense begged for mercy, claimed Harold was a man driven to desperation by gambling addiction. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. On the count of murder in the first degree of Sarah Garrett, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of murder in the first degree of Linda Morrison, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of attempted murder of Pam Garrett, we find the defendant guilty. The convictions kept coming: insurance fraud, arson, conspiracy, witness intimidation. Harold stood stoically as his life ended with each guilty verdict. At sentencing 2 weeks later, I gave my victim impact statement. Harold Garrett stole my mother from me. He plotted her death for money, burned her alive while she begged for my life. He's not my father. He's a monster who happened to share my home. Mom knew what he was and died protecting me from him. Her courage in death exposed his lifetime of evil. I ask for the maximum sentence, not for revenge, but for justice. For Mom. For Linda. For all the women whose names were on his list. Harold tried to speak to me as guards led him away to serve life without parole. Pam, please, you're still my daughter. No, I said firmly. I'm Sarah Garrett's daughter. You're nothing to me but her killer. He shuffled away in shackles, finally silenced. Outside the courthouse, Chen found me. There's something else. Vincent Torino was arrested this morning in a federal raid. Your mother's evidence helped build that case too. The entire network is crumbling. Mom's reach extended even further than we'd known. Her meticulous documentation hadn't just caught her killers. It had exposed an entire criminal enterprise. She really did win, I said, looking up at the gray sky. Completely, Chen agreed. Harold will die in prison. Diane will serve decades. Torino's organization is finished. Your mother orchestrated all of this with her preparation and courage. That night, Grace and I visited Mom's grave for the first time since the funeral. I placed roses, her favorites from her garden that I'd managed to save and replant. We did it, Mom, I told the headstone. Harold will never hurt anyone again. Linda has justice. You saved us all. The wind rustled through the cemetery trees, and for just a moment, I could swear I smelled her lavender perfume. The arrest operation unfolded like a choreographed dance of justice. I watched from Chen's unmarked car as tactical teams surrounded Diane's apartment complex. It was 3 a.m., the time when even the guilty sleep, deeply unprepared for their world to end. Both targets are inside, Chen reported, listening to her earpiece. Thermal imaging shows 2 figures in the bedroom. I thought of them sleeping peacefully while Mom lay in the cold ground. The fury that rose in me was sharp enough to cut. Teams in position, came the radio call. On your signal. Chen looked at me one last time. You sure you want to see this? I need to, I said firmly. I need to see their faces when they realize it's over. Go, go, go. The tactical team moved with military precision. The battering ram destroyed Diane's door in one swing. Officers flooded in shouts of "Police search warrant," echoing across the parking lot. Through Diane's lit windows, we could see shadows moving frantically. Then Harold appeared shirtless and wild-eyed, pushed onto the balcony in handcuffs. Even from a distance, I could see his mouth moving, probably spinning lies about his innocence. Diane followed moments later, her silk nightgown askew, her perfect hair a tangled mess. She was sobbing, the sound carrying clearly in the still night air. Harold Garrett, you're under arrest for the murder of Sarah Garrett, the murder of Linda Morrison, conspiracy to commit murder, arson, insurance fraud. The list of charges went on, each one a nail in the coffin Mom had built for them. Chen and I approached as they were led to separate squad cars. Harold saw me first, his face contorting with desperate hope. And Pam, tell them this is a mistake. You know I'd never hurt your mother. I walked closer, wanting him to see my face clearly. I told them everything, Harold, every word you said, every threat you made. Mom recorded you planning her murder. It's over. The hope in his eyes died, replaced by something darker. You little... Mr. Garrett, I'd advise you to remain silent, his hastily arrived lawyer interrupted. But Harold was past caring. She was gonna destroy everything. The business, our family, my life. She deserved what she got. Harold, shut up, Diane screamed from her squad car, but the damage was done. He'd confessed in front of a dozen officers. I turned to Diane, this woman who'd smiled at me for years while sleeping with my father and planning my mother's death. She trusted you. I trusted you. Diane's tears streaked her makeup into a grotesque mask. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. He made me do it. He said he'd kill me too if I didn't help. Save it for the jury, Chen said coldly, though I doubt they'll be any more sympathetic than we are. As the squad cars pulled away, Harold's face appeared in the rear window, mouth moving in what looked like curses. Diane had curled into herself, sobbing hysterically. 2 killers finally facing consequences. We're not done, Chen said. Search teams are processing both locations now. The evidence they found exceeded our wildest hopes. In Harold's home office, Safe detailed plans for the fire insurance documents with forged signatures and a suicide note supposedly from Mom that he'd never gotten the chance to plant. The note blamed depression and financial stress, absolving Harold of any responsibility. In Diane's apartment, the accelerant still in her garage. The clothes she'd worn that night shoved in a trash bag but never disposed of. They reeked of gasoline and smoke, her journal detailing the affair and her growing fear of Harold. But the most damning discovery came from Harold's storage unit. You need to see this, the lead investigator told Chen over the phone. We arrived to find a treasure trove of horror, files on women Harold had researched, their insurance policies, daily routines, vulnerabilities. Some were clients' wives. Others were women he'd met casually. All were potential victims. This one, the investigator pointed to a file. She died in a car accident 2 years ago. Single vehicle drove off a cliff. Her husband hired Harold's company for renovations 6 months before she died. Another suspicious death. Another grieving husband who'd moved on quickly. Another insurance payout. How many? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. We're checking at least 6 deaths that fit the pattern. Your mother didn't just stop her own killer, she exposed a potential serial murderer. In the corner sat a box marked Linda. Inside were her photos, her jewelry, even a lock of her hair, trophies of his first kill kept for 15 years. He never threw anything away, Chen observed. His arrogance was his downfall. He thought he'd never be caught. The processing continued through the morning. By noon, the evidence filled an entire room at the police station. Financial records showing Harold's debts, phone records proving conspiracy, physical evidence linking both killers to the crime scene. Vincent Torino's arrest came that afternoon. The FBI raid on his compound netted dozens of criminals, millions in illegal assets and records, implicating Harold in money laundering along with murder. Mom's evidence had started an avalanche that buried an entire criminal network. I watched the news coverage from Chen's office, feeling numb as reporters breathlessly detailed the web of murder and corruption surrounding Harold Garrett. They showed his photo, the charming businessman who'd hidden a monster's heart. Then Mom's photo, the victim who'd become an avenging angel through her meticulous preparation. Sarah Garrett's courage in documenting her killer's crimes has led to the largest organized crime bust in state history, the Anchor reported. Her daughter Pam worked with police to trap the killers, risking her own life for justice. You did it, Chen said quietly. Both of you, mother and daughter, finishing what Harold started. That evening, I returned to our burned house one last time. The structure was condemned, scheduled for demolition. But I needed to see it to stand where Mom had died, to say goodbye to the life we'd shared there. The master bedroom window still showed her handprints in soot where she'd pounded desperately for escape. The floor where she died was charred beyond recognition. But somehow in the closet, I found something that had survived. A small, fireproof box hidden behind fallen debris. Inside were photos of us together. Every birthday and Christmas, every milestone and quiet moment, and a letter dated just a week before she died. My dearest Pam, if you're reading this, then you've found my final insurance policy. Not money, but memories. These photos are proof of a life lived with love despite the darkness I've discovered in Harold. Remember us as we were in these moments, happy, safe together. The man who might have taken my life could never touch what we shared. You are loved beyond measure, beyond death, beyond fear. Forever. Mom. I clutched the box as I walked through our destroyed home one last time. Every room held ghosts. Mom cooking in the kitchen, reading in the living room, tucking me in even when I was too old for it. Harold had burned the house, but he couldn't burn the love that had filled it. Outside demolition crews waited. Tomorrow they'd tear down what remained, but Mom had already won. Her killers were in custody. Her daughter was safe. Her legacy of courage would inspire other women to document abuse, to prepare for the worst, while hoping for the best. We need to go, Chen said gently. Harold's arraignment is tomorrow. Are you ready? I looked back at the house one last time. I've been ready since the moment I woke up in that hospital. Let's finish this. As we drove away, I thought I saw Mom's silhouette in the window, finally at peace. But it was just the setting sun reflecting off broken glass, casting shadows that looked like goodbye. The trial's verdict had been everything we'd hoped for, but the revelations that followed in the weeks after sentencing shook me to my core. It started with a call from Detective Chen, her voice unusually tense. Pam, we need to meet. There's been a development with the other suspicious deaths. We met at a coffee shop downtown, far from any memories of Harold or Mom. Chen spread files across the table, each one representing a life cut short. Remember the woman who drove off a cliff, Rebecca Turner? I nodded, recalling the file from Harold's storage unit. Her sister came forward after seeing the trial coverage. She has recordings too. Rebecca had called her the night before she died, terrified. Her husband had hired Harold for a renovation, and Harold had been asking strange questions about their life insurance, their debts, her daily routine. "You think Harold helped plan her murder?" We found payments. The husband paid Harold $50,000 for consulting services 2 days after Rebecca's death. The renovation was never completed. My coffee turned bitter in my mouth. He was a murder consultant. It appears so. He'd identify desperate men with financial problems, men whose wives had good insurance policies. For a fee, he'd share his expertise, make it look accidental. Fire was his specialty, but he diversified. 6 files lay before me. 6 women ages ranging from 28 to 53. Different cities, different circumstances, but all connected to Harold through construction contracts or gambling associates. All dead within months of their husbands' increasing insurance policies. Martha Coleman house fire, Janet Wu carbon monoxide poisoning, Rebecca Turner car accident, Lisa Hendricks fall downstairs, Angela Marquez drowning, Karen Phillips allergic reaction. Chen tapped each file. Every death ruled accidental until now. 6 women, I whispered, plus Linda and Mom, 8 murders. That we know of. We're reviewing every death connected to Harold's clients for the past 15 years. The number could be higher. I thought of those women going about their daily lives unaware they'd been marked for death by a charming contractor who specialized in murder. How many times had Harold sat at our dinner table fresh from planning another woman's death? "There's more," Chen continued. "We found Harold's real accounts. He had nearly $2 million hidden in offshore accounts. Payment for his consulting work. He never needed to kill your mother for money. He had plenty. He killed her because she discovered his secret life." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Mom hadn't died for insurance money. She died because she'd stumbled onto something far worse, a serial killer hiding in plain sight, wearing the mask of a loving husband. "We found her investigation files," Chen added gently, "the ones she hadn't sent to Grace yet. She'd connected at least 3 of the deaths to Harold. She was building a case to take to the FBI. She handed me a folder marked Evidence, Harold's other victims in Mom's handwriting. Inside were newspaper clippings, obituaries, financial records she'd somehow obtained, notes in her careful script connecting dates, places, patterns. She'd been so close to exposing him. She was going to stop him, I said, tears blurring the pages. She did stop him. Through you, through the evidence she left behind. Every one of these cases is being reopened. Families who never had answers are finally getting justice. The next weeks brought a parade of grieving relatives, Rebecca Turner's sister, Martha Coleman's daughter, Janet Wu's parents. All had suspected foul play but been dismissed as grief-stricken paranoid. Now they had validation answers and a target for their rage. Harold was charged with 8 counts of murder, 6 counts of conspiracy to commit murder. His hidden fortune was seized, distributed among the victims' families. The men who'd hired him for their wives' deaths were arrested one by one, their own greed and desperation having led them to Harold's web. During this time, I received a visit from someone unexpected. Harold's mother, my grandmother Ellen, whom I'd only met twice. She was in her 80s, frail but sharp-eyed. "I always knew," she said quietly, sitting in my temporary apartment. "Even as a child, Harold had a darkness in him. He'd kill neighborhood cats, then cry at their funerals. He'd comfort grieving friends while hiding their lost items. The pattern was there." "Why didn't you—" Who would believe a mother saying such things? I tried to get him help, but he was so charming, so convincing. Therapists thought I was the problem. His father said I was hysterical. She dabbed at her eyes. When Linda died, I knew. But again, no proof, just a mother's intuition. She reached into her purse, pulling out an envelope. This is for you. I've been saving it hoping someday Harold would face justice. It's not much, but it's clean money. My own savings, nothing touched by his evil. Inside was a check for $100,000. I can't, I started. You're my granddaughter. Sarah was a good woman who loved my son, despite what he was. Let me do this one thing right by her memory. I accepted knowing I donated to the women's shelter I was planning in Mom's name. Ellen hugged me carefully, whispering, I'm sorry I couldn't stop him sooner. The final revelation came from Diane during her formal sentencing hearing. Trying for a reduced sentence, she revealed one last horror. Harold had a list, she testified, not just potential victims, but women who'd gotten away, who'd left abusive husbands, escaped bad situations. He called them the ones that got away and tracked them obsessively. Mom's name had been on that list, added after she'd first tried to leave Harold 6 months before her death. He'd been planning her murder even as he begged her to try counseling to work things out. Every reconciliation attempt had been a manipulation, buying time to perfect his plan. He said women who tried to leave were dangerous, Diane continued. They might talk, might expose things. Better to remove the threat permanently. He had addresses, routines, vulnerabilities for dozens of women. The FBI took over that aspect of the investigation, tracking down women who didn't even know they'd been stalked by a serial killer, each one saved by Mom's sacrifice, by the investigation her death triggered. At Diane's final sentencing, she received 40 years with possibility of parole in 30. She'd avoided a life sentence only by revealing Harold's entire network, his methods, his future plans. She wept as they led her away, but I felt no sympathy. She'd made her choices. Harold himself faced trial after trial as new charges piled up. Each conviction added decades to his sentence. By the end, he'd accumulated 320 years in prison. He would die in a cell alone and forgotten, except by those who hated him. The last time I saw him was during the final trial. He'd aged 20 years and months, his hair white, his face gaunt. He tried to catch my eye, perhaps, hoping for some flicker of the daughter he'd pretended to love. I looked through him, as if he were glass, giving him nothing. After the final verdict, the prosecutor approached me. Your mother saved at least 43 women that we can document. Those on his future victim list, those whose husbands might have hired him, those who would have crossed his path. Her courage created a ripple effect that saved lives across 3 states. 43 women who got to live, love, grow old. Children who wouldn't lose their mothers, families that wouldn't be shattered by greed and violence. Mom's legacy grew with each saved life. That night, I stood in the cemetery with Aunt Grace and Ellen, telling Mom about all we'd uncovered, the full scope of Harold's evil, but more importantly, the full scope of her heroism. You didn't just save me, I told her headstone. You saved women you'd never met, families you'd never know. You stopped a monster and exposed a network of evil. You're a hero, Mom, a real hero. The wind rustled through the flowers we'd placed, roses from the garden I'd recreated at my new home. Somewhere in that breeze, I could almost hear her voice. I just did what any mother would do. But she'd done so much more. She'd turned her murder into the weapon that destroyed her killer and saved dozens of others. Even in death, Sarah Garrett was still protecting the innocent. 2 years later, I stood before a gathering of survivors, donors, and supporters as we cut the ribbon on Sarah's haven. The 3-story Victorian house had been transformed from a derelict property into a beacon of hope, its sunny yellow paint and welcoming porch a stark contrast to its purpose, sheltering women fleeing dangerous relationships. My mother died because she waited 1 day too long to leave. I told the crowd, my voice steady with practice. She spent months gathering evidence, building a case, trying to protect me while planning our escape. But predators move faster than paperwork. Sarah's Haven exists to make sure no woman has to choose between evidence and escape. Here, they can have both. The shelter was more than just beds and walls. We'd partnered with law enforcement to have evidence collection kits on site. Hidden cameras could be borrowed to document abuse. Secure computers allowed women to research and plan without digital trails their abusers could follow. A legal team worked pro bono to fast-track restraining orders and divorce proceedings. Everything Mom had needed available under one roof. Detective Chen now. Captain Chen stood in the front row, beaming with pride. She'd been instrumental in setting up our partnership with the police department. Beside her stood Mr. Thompson, our security consultant, who'd insisted on installing a state-of-the-art system. "I couldn't save Sarah," he'd said simply, "but I can help save others." The crowd applauded as we toured the facility. 24 beds in private rooms, not dormitory-style bunks. A children's playroom that could be monitored from the security office. A commercial kitchen where residents could cook their own meals, maintaining some normalcy in chaos. But the room that meant the most to me was the smallest. A soundproof office where women could record evidence safely, their voices protected as Mom's had been. "We've already helped 30 women in our soft opening," I announced. 3 of them discovered their husbands were planning to harm them. With our help, they gathered evidence, contacted authorities, and escaped before becoming statistics. They're alive because Sarah's Haven exists, because my mother's death taught us that documentation and departure must happen simultaneously. Among the supporters was Rebecca Turner's sister, who donated $50,000. "Your mother's investigation helped solve my sister's murder," she'd written. "This is Rebecca's money finally doing good instead of enriching her killer." Martha Coleman's daughter had funded the children's playroom. Janet Wu's parents established a scholarship fund for residents seeking education. Each victim of Harold's network had transformed into a force for prevention. As the formal ceremony ended and tours began, I slipped away to my office. Once a small bedroom, now command central for our operations. The walls held photos of the 8 confirmed victims of Harold's murder consulting business, including Mom and Linda Morrison. But they also held success stories, women who'd escaped children who'd grown up safe families, reunited in healthier circumstances. A soft knock interrupted my reflection. A young woman stood in the doorway holding a small suitcase and looking terrified. Her eye was blackened, her arm in a makeshift sling. "Are you Pam?" she asked hesitantly. I think my husband is going to kill me. He increased my life insurance last month. He's been asking strange questions about my daily routine. And yesterday, I found searches on his computer about house fires." My blood chilled at the familiar pattern. "What's your name?" Jennifer Martinez. "I heard about this place on the news, about what happened to your mom, the signs you talked about. They're all there." I stood moving carefully to avoid startling her. "You're safe now, Jennifer. Let's get you checked and document your injuries, and then we'll talk to the police. You did the right thing coming here." As I led her to intake, Jennifer said something that stopped me cold. "My husband hired a contractor last week for renovations, he says, but nothing's been done. The contractor just asks questions about our insurance, our schedules. His name is Mitchell Davies." I texted Chen immediately. We'd discovered Harold had protégés, men he'd trained in his methods. They were still out there, still hunting, but now we were hunting them. Within hours, Jennifer was safe in a secure room while police investigated Mitchell Davies. By morning, they'd arrested him with plans for Jennifer's death in his vehicle. Another life saved another predator caught. This became our pattern. Women arrived with fragments of fear, half-heard conversations, suspicious changes in their partner's behavior. We helped them piece together the danger document, the evidence and escape before tragedy struck. Our success rate was remarkable. In 2 years, not one woman who came to us was harmed after leaving. The shelter grew. We opened a second location, then a third. The Sarah's Haven model was replicated in other states. Mom's story became a cautionary tale told in police academies and domestic violence trainings. The Garrett pattern entered law enforcement vocabulary. Insurance increases research into accidents, behavioral changes that preceded planned murders. I began speaking at conferences sharing our story and the warning signs Mom had documented. Often, women approached me afterward with their own fears. More than once, these conversations led to arrests, saved lives, exposed would-be killers who thought they were clever enough to copy Harold's methods. On the 5th anniversary of Mom's death, we held a memorial at the shelter. Over 200 women attended, all survivors who'd found safety at Sarah's Haven or its sister locations. As candles flickered in the evening air, woman after woman shared their story. I left with nothing but my children and the evidence Pam helped me gather. My husband's in prison now for conspiracy to commit murder. The recording equipment here captured him discussing my death with his girlfriend. I'm alive because Sarah Garrett's daughter taught us to document everything. My name would have been on a list like Harold Garrett's if this place hadn't existed. Instead, I'm in law school helping other women escape. Each testimony was a victory Mom would never see but had made possible. Her death had become a master class in survival, her preparation a template for escape. As the evening ended, Aunt Grace found me on the porch. She would be so proud, she said simply. I know. I looked out at the lights of the city, thinking of all the women out there who might need us. But we're not done. There are more Harolds, more Dianes, more women who need to know the signs. Then we keep going, Grace agreed. We keep saving them. The next morning brought a new challenge. Chen called with disturbing news. We found an online forum, men sharing Harold's methods calling themselves the Garrett Group. They're trading tips on making murder look accidental. Shut it down, I said immediately. We're working on it. But Pam, this is bigger than we thought. Harold created a movement. We need to adapt. And we did. Sarah's Haven launched a digital division monitoring online spaces where potential killers might gather. We created public awareness campaigns about the warning signs. We partnered with insurance companies to flag suspicious policy changes. Every evolution of evil met with an evolution of prevention. Today, as I write this final chapter of our story, Sarah's Haven has saved over 1,000 lives. The shelter Mom's death built has become a national model. Laws have changed because of our advocacy. Police protocols now include checking for the Garrett pattern in domestic situations. But the individual victories matter most. Jennifer Martinez, who walked in that first day, now runs our West Coast operations. Rebecca Turner's daughter volunteers as a counselor. Mr. Thompson, at 93, still mans our security desk 1 day a week, proud of every woman he helps save. In my office, Mom's photo watches over it all. Not a photo from her death or the trial, but from my college graduation. Her smile radiant with pride and love. Beside it hangs the letter she left in the fireproof box. You are loved beyond measure, beyond death, beyond fear. She was right. Her love transcended death, becoming a shield for thousands of women. Her fear transformed into our vigilance. Her preparation became our salvation. I survived the house fire, I tell each new resident. My father said Mom died and I was the only one who survived, but that was a lie. Mom survived too. In every woman we save, every killer we stop, every life that continues because of what she taught us. She's not gone. She multiplied. The phone rings. Another woman in danger, another life to save. I answer with the words that have become our motto, Mom's final gift to the world. You're not alone, we believe you. Let's get you safe. Because that's what Mom would do, what she did do even unto death. She got me safe. Now it's my turn to carry on her work, one saved life at a time. If you've been touched by this story, if you see warning signs in your own relationship, if something feels wrong, even if you can't prove it, please reach out. Comment below with your thoughts. Share this story with someone who might need to see it. Like this video if you believe Mom's message of courage and preparation needs to spread. And please subscribe to hear more stories of survival and triumph. Remember, document everything. Trust your instincts. Plan your escape carefully, but don't wait too long. And know that somewhere Sarah Garrett's daughter is waiting to help you just as her mother would have wanted. Thank you for listening to our story. Mom always said the truth wins in the end. She was right about that, too. It just sometimes needs help from those brave enough to tell it. Stay safe, stay strong, and remember, you are loved beyond measure, beyond death, beyond fear.